Hey guys, welcome to Calm History. Tonight we're wandering through muddy village roads, dodging chamber pots from above, and catching glimpses of our reflection in bits of burnished metal. Because tonight, we're diving deep into the strange, often painful world of medieval beauty standards. You might think your skincare routine is high maintenance now, but in the 14th century, you'd be lucky to have water that didn't smell like livestock. Imagine trying to look presentable when mirrors are scarce, cosmetics are toxic, and people judge your virtue based on the size of your forehead. You're not just living in the Middle Ages, you are someone in them now. And whether you're a young noblewoman trying to marry up, or a peasant hoping to avoid accusations of vanity, or worse, witchcraft, your appearance is your resume, your dowry, your soul laid bare. Hey, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and what time it is where you're tuning in from. I love seeing how far we travel together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge across damp cobblestones, your worn leather shoes squelching slightly with each step. The morning air is sharp, tinged with wood smoke and something less poetic. Probably the nearby tannery. No one's washed in days, and the town's one well is both a water source and occasional laundry bin. But still, you've got to look your best. Why? Because appearances are everything. Your face might be dirty, your breath questionable, but your skin tone and hairstyle could decide your future. You glance toward a polished brass basin, one of the few reflective surfaces in town. Your image is warped, but still visible. The goal? Pale. The paler, the better. A light complexion means you don't work outside. It means you're refined, wealthy, wholly even. If your skin hints at a tan, you're already at a disadvantage, assumed to be a laborer or worse, morally lax. You duck into the home of an older cousin, who's rumored to know beauty secrets. Her hut smells like dried herbs, something sharp and metallic, and a hint of cat. She's mixing something in a stone bowl. Vinegar, powdered lead, and a few crushed pearls. Apply this, she says, and stay out of the sun for 3 weeks. You hesitate. Lead? Pearls? That's more than your monthly wages. But the alternative is walking around looking, well, alive. And no one wants that. Historians still argue whether most peasants genuinely engaged in these routines, or if such potions were reserved for the wealthy. But the obsession with pale skin is well documented in manuscripts, poems, and courtly letters. Meanwhile, your cousin leans in and plucks at your forehead. Your hairline's too low, she tuts. You'll never find a suitor with a forehead that small. You blink. What? Welcome to the age of the inverted beauty norm. A high forehead is the hallmark of refinement. Fashionable ladies pluck or even shave the front of their hairlines to make their foreheads look taller, nobler. You suddenly remember a portrait in the Lord's Manor. The lady in it had the brow of a dolphin. Regal, in her own way. Back outside, you pass by a market stall selling ribbons, rose water, and a rare tin of something labeled Cosmetica. The seller, a wiry man with 3 teeth and an eye patch, leans in. For your cheeks, dear. Makes you look untouched. You're skeptical, but also intrigued. There's pressure from all sides. Clerics warn about the sin of vanity, but the same priests marry girls off based on looks alone. Your neighbor was turned down for a match last week because she had a ruddy face. You've heard of girls being sent to convents because no one would marry them, and the nunnery wasn't a place of peace and quiet. More like underheated stone walls, morning bells at 4 a.m., and prayers until your knees gave out. You move toward the square, passing by a tapestry hanging from a balcony. It shows a lady with golden hair, skin like alabaster, and lips as pink as crushed berries. She's flanked by a unicorn and a lion, symbolism you don't fully understand, but it all feels divine. You rub at your own nose. It's red from cold, and you probably look like someone's snotty cousin rather than a romantic ideal. You wrap your cloak tighter. The truth? Medieval beauty standards were mostly unattainable because they were designed to be that way. They reinforce social status, punish deviation, and rewarded conformity to a fantasy. One that was often created by artists who exaggerated features to make patrons look holier, wealthier, or more saint-like than any real human possibly could. Even the paintings in chapels show Mary with skin that glows like marble, lashes a modern influencer would kill for, and a perfectly oval face. Not exactly achievable on 4 hours of sleep and a diet of cabbage and hope. But still you try. You spend an hour grinding bark to mix into a paste for your cheeks. You avoid sun like it's contagious. You debate shaving your eyebrows. All because the women in stories, like the heroine in Tristan and Isolde, are described as having hair like gold, lips like rubies, and skin like milk. Even the tragic ones. Especially the tragic ones. And yet, no one talks about the rashes. Or the accidental poisonings. Or the young girls who went blind from beauty treatments involving belladonna. You glance again at your distorted reflection. You're palish. Your forehead looks taller today. Progress? Then the bell tolls from the church tower. Time to hide your vanity and look humble. You adjust your head covering, smear the rose-scented fat on your neck, and head toward morning prayers, where you'll try not to fidget while the priest warns against the temptations of flesh. You've barely started your day, and already your appearance has been judged 5 different ways. You're tired, your cheeks are chapped, and you haven't even started plucking your brows yet. But don't worry, we've got 34 more sections to really feel the burn of medieval glam. You duck beneath a crumbling archway as the chill wind cuts across the courtyard. The sun is just peeking through the clouds, casting a pale yellow light over the stone buildings. But not on you, if you can help it. Because sunshine in this world is not your friend. You glance toward a servant girl hauling firewood, her face ruddy and hands cracked. She's lovely in a real way, healthy, flushed, alive. And yet, by medieval standards, practically scandalous. That tan on her arms? It screams peasant. The rosiness in her cheeks? Unrefined. That robust, outdoors aglow modern influencers might spend hours cultivating? It's a disaster here. You, meanwhile, are actively trying to look like a cold, waxy candle with vague signs of breathing. The goal is simple: be pale. Milky, ghostly, pre-vampire. This isn't about fashion. It's about status. If you're pale, it means you don't work outside, which means you're wealthy, which means you're closer to God, somehow. Beauty and morality are linked in twisted, hilarious ways here. You pull your hood farther forward, shielding your face from the growing light. Just yesterday, you overheard a young woman being praised for looking as white as the Virgin Mary's soul. And that's the high bar now, Virgin Mary level. So what's the game plan? Well, it starts with staying indoors. A lot. Preferably in the dimmest part of the house, near a wall tapestry to keep warm and close to no one who might suggest chores. You learn to navigate the shadows. You pray for cloudy days. And if the sun insists on shining? Time for the backup plan, cosmetic warfare. Your beauty kit includes some questionable items. A tin vial labeled Sarasa, for example. That's white lead. Yes, lead. You smear it on your cheeks in thin layers, let it dry, and feel your skin tighten as though it's quietly screaming. Historians still argue whether most women had daily access to this, or whether it was reserved for the elite. But references to white lead cosmetics pop up again and again in medical texts and literature. The more toxic, the more fashionable, it seems. And don't even think about sweating. One warm day and your carefully painted face becomes a tragedy of peeling chalk, dribbled lead, and public humiliation. You recall the story of Lady Amalia who fainted at a spring fair not from corset pressure, but because her white paste melted and got into her mouth. For those who can't afford lead, other options abound. Vinegar washes to strip color. Egg whites to create a faux shine. Chalk dust mixed with honey for that. I've been buried for a year. Glow. And if you're desperate? Leeching. Yes, leeches. You lie down, head tilted, as 2 small black creatures latch onto your neck. The goal? Drain just enough blood to leave you looking faint and fragile. The ideal woman is pale and anemic. a romantic vision of near death. Of course, there's a fringe tip you hear in hushed whispers: crushed white lilies mixed with goat milk and ash. Supposedly it clears the skin. More likely it just makes you smell like a barn fire. Still, you try it. You remember a court lady bragging that her face was so pale, the candlelight reflected off her jaw. No one mentions that she also had constant migraines, possibly from lead poisoning or poor circulation, or just the emotional toll of playing this game every day. Meanwhile, men aren't entirely free from this madness either. Noblemen sometimes powder their faces too, though they pretend it's to. Even the skin. After battle. Right. Because applying crushed pearl dust while shirtless in a mirror definitely screams warrior. And let's not forget diet. To preserve your complexion, you're advised to avoid heating foods. That means no onions, no wine, no garlic. Anything that might add color to your cheeks, or worse, cause digestive rumblings, is suspect. You sip watery oat broth and chew bland root vegetables, dreaming of a single juicy fig. You pull out your small compact. Well, technically it's a polished silver button you stole from an old tunic, and peer at your face. There's a pimple forming on your left cheek. It's glowing like a beacon in the dark. Panic. Your cousin recommends a paste of mashed mint, chicken grease, and powdered chalk. You apply it, unsure if it's a cure or dinner. She nods sagely, then suggests rubbing your face with a linen cloth soaked in virgin morning dew. Whatever that means. Historians still debate how much of this was daily practice, and how much was reserved for festivals, marriages, or court appearances. But one thing's clear: if you're trying to keep up with the standard, you'll spend more time on your appearance than you ever do actually living in it. And it's not just about being pale. You have to stay pale. Forever. Which means aging is your mortal enemy. That's a problem for later, of course. Right now, you've got bigger concerns, like whether your face is pale enough for the village dance tonight. You've been avoiding the hearth all day, hiding from sunlight like a disgraced vampire. You only hope your complexion says, celestial angel, and not, recently deceased. Before you leave the house, you dip a rag into your vinegar jar and dab at your cheeks one last time. You whisper a quick prayer, mostly that the lead doesn't kill you before marriage. And then, out the door you go. Hood up. Chin high. Cheekbones coated in paste. You are luminous. You are terrifying. You are slightly dizzy. You've mastered the art of medieval pallor, at least for tonight. You wake before dawn, the fire long gone cold, and immediately reach for the cloth covering your forehead. It's damp from sweat. You slept with it tied tight around your brow again, hoping, desperately, that it would keep your hairline from creeping any farther forward. But secretly, you also hope it's helping in the opposite direction. Because in this world, the higher your forehead, the higher your social value. And right now, yours just isn't high enough. You sit up, fumble for a shard of looking glass, cracked but functional, and hold it to the sliver of candlelight. There they are, your eyebrows. Mocking you. Full, dark, and tragically present. You sigh. Time to pluck again. Yes, you heard that right. Plucking your eyebrows in medieval Europe isn't just about shaping them. It's about removing them entirely, along with as much of the hair along your hairline as you can stomach. The goal is a smooth, unbroken expanse of pale forehead, long and luminous like a porcelain dome. Beautiful, alien, and aggressively impractical. You reach for the tweezers, really just two sharpened bits of metal wire twisted into a clamp. The pain is instant. One pluck, two plucks, then 10. Your eyes water. A tear slides down your cheek, catches the edge of the white powder still clinging to your jaw from yesterday. You wonder who even started this trend. Historians still argue whether it came from religious imagery, depictions of the Virgin Mary with otherworldly, smooth features, or from court painters who stylized noblewomen to emphasize their foreheads like glowing moons. Either way, it stuck. For centuries. And now you're stuck with it too. The neighbors are doing it. Even the baker's daughter has taken to singeing her brows with a heated iron rod. Quicker than plucking, sure, but risky if you sneeze. And Lady Mathilde, the Baron's sister? She has a live-in plucker. A full-time servant just to maintain her bald, holy glow. You're not quite there yet, but you're committed. Because if someone mistakes your natural brows for intentional ones, you might as well confess to heresy and be done with it. You dab your forehead with cool water, soothing the angry red skin where hair used to live. Then you smear a paste made from rose petals and animal fat across the area, a homemade balm to prevent infection, or at least dull the sting. It smells like a wilted bouquet that's been stepped on by a goat. Lovely. Outside, you hear the market carts rattling over cobblestone. The day is beginning. You wrap your head in linen, leaving only your face visible, your smooth, empty brow framed like a parchment waiting for calligraphy. There's a fringe remedy you heard about last week from the tanner's wife, applying pigeon droppings to the forehead to cool the skin and encourage hair loss. You pretend to be disgusted, but you're already eyeing the pigeons roosting above the eaves with new interest. You pass a group of women by the well. One of them, older, with a face like carved wood, says something about how the Lord values inner beauty. And yet, when her daughter walks by with a nearly hairless brow and cheekbones to slice bread with, the old woman practically beams with pride. Ah, the contradiction. It's not just vanity. In this society, beauty is your currency. A woman's appearance can determine marriage prospects, her family's alliances, even her dowry value. The smoother your brow, the higher your bride price. Literally. Of course, if you're too beautiful, suspiciously beautiful, you might draw the wrong kind of attention. People whisper, "Is it natural? Does she consort with spirits?" Remember that time you applied too much cheek rouge and someone asked if you'd been bewitched? It's a delicate balance, attractive enough to be desired, but not so stunning you're accused of sorcery. Welcome to the medieval tightrope walk. You arrive at the chapel square just as the sun breaks through the clouds. You step into the shade of a stone arch, clutching your scarf tighter. The young acolyte glances at you. Then again. You pretend not to notice. "Your forehead," he says finally, "looks devout." You blink. That might be the strangest compliment you've ever received. But in this context, it's a win. You mutter a polite thank you and keep walking, fighting the instinct to laugh or cry. In the chapel, women kneel on stone floors, heads bowed, veils pinned in place. You spot one girl with just a few wisps of hair left above her brow. Either she's aiming high or she slipped with the knife. Her mother is beaming. The priest begins to speak about modesty, humility, the sin of pride. You wonder if he's noticed that every woman in the front pew is basically glowing with crushed pearl and forehead grease. The contradiction is never-ending. You're not supposed to care how you look, but you'd better not look bad. You're supposed to be modest, but don't be plain. And above all, you must never act like you're trying. Your beauty must appear as natural as a spring bloom, completely effortless and suspiciously impossible. You glance around. No one is breathing hard. No one is adjusting their veils. Everyone is pretending their faces just are that way. It's all a grand illusion. A pageant performed on stone floors under stained glass light. Later you walk home past the tapestry merchant. A new piece is hanging in the stall, a noblewoman kneeling in a garden, with golden hair, dainty hands, and yes, the largest forehead you've ever seen. It's practically architectural. You smile. Not because it's beautiful, but because it's familiar now. You're learning the rules of this world. They may be brutal. They may be ridiculous. But they're yours now. You're in it. And tomorrow? You'll try the pigeon droppings. You wake to a sharp pain in your jaw, your mouth dry as parchment. That weird dream about kissing a knight with dragon breath suddenly makes a lot more sense, because yours is just as lethal. You roll over, reach for the water jug, and take a cautious sip. It tastes faintly of iron and moss, but it'll do. Then you touch your teeth. Still there. Mostly. In the soft morning light, you remember, you've got a wedding to attend today. Not yours, thank goodness, but someone else's, meaning you have to look radiant, which is medieval code for not alarming. And the pressure's on. not just the usual pale skin and smooth brow. Today, it's also about your teeth. Yes, teeth. Those bony survivors clinging to your gums like desperate villagers on a sinking ship. In the 14th century, having white, even teeth is the medieval equivalent of driving a nice horse and owning more than one room in your house. It signals wealth, youth, and spiritual cleanliness. Unfortunately, dental hygiene is not really a thing. You step outside and catch a glimpse of your reflection in a puddle. Your teeth flash briefly, and not in a good way. A little yellow, a little jagged. Nothing a modern toothbrush couldn't fix, if you had one. But here, you've got salt, a twig, and hope. First, you grab your cleaning stick, a bit of hazelwood whittled to a point. You chew one end until it frays into bristles, then scrub away at your teeth like you're sanding down old furniture. It kind of works. Kind of. Then comes the fun part, whitening. Your cousin swears by a mixture of crushed eggshells, vinegar, and pumice. The result is chalky, sour, and slightly gritty, like brushing your teeth with old roof tile. Another local trick? Powdered bone. Ground down and rubbed into the enamel to make your smile shine like the Virgin's veil. Very poetic. Less sanitary. Historians still argue whether these methods were widespread or if they were confined to the wealthier classes. But even peasants made efforts, especially on feast days or festivals, scraping, rinsing, sometimes even staining their teeth with herbal tinctures to cover decay. Because bad teeth aren't just a cosmetic issue. They're a moral one. If your breath stinks, you must have something to hide. If your teeth are blackened, maybe your soul is too. And then there's the issue of breath itself. Let's be honest, it's not great. Your diet consists of garlic, onions, dried fish, and occasional meat that's optimistically aged. Combine that with zero flossing and a total lack of mouthwash, and you're essentially a walking plague cloud. To combat this, you chew parsley. A lot of it. You also suck on cloves, which are expensive but effective, until you accidentally bite down and numb half your face. You consider boiling mint in wine, like your friend Beatrix does, but last time it turned into a fermented soup that smelled like regret. There's a fringe remedy making the rounds involving burnt rosemary mixed with stale ale. You try it once and nearly vomit, so that's off the table. Of course, some people just accept their breath of doom and lean into it. Old Father Thomas, the traveling preacher, has a mouth like a crypt but insists it adds gravitas to his sermons. "The Lord gave me this voice," he declares. You're fairly certain the Lord didn't gift him halitosis, but you smile and nod anyway. Back home, you prepare for the wedding. You scrape your tongue with a spoon. You rub a cloth over your teeth. Then, just to be safe, you chew a bit of fennel and say a quick prayer. Dear God, let me not knock out the bride with a single exhale. At the church, the guests arrive in layers of wool and linen, the air thick with perfume, sweat, and anxiety. You keep your mouth closed as much as possible. Smiling? Only when necessary. Laughing? Never, unless you want to unleash the fury. Then the bride appears. She's glowing, ethereal, and most importantly, her teeth are dazzling. You squint. Is that chalk dust? Rumor has it she paid a merchant for a Venetian concoction that includes pearl powder, ash, and, get this, crushed snail shells. Whatever it is, it works. Her smile blinds half the congregation. Later, at the feast, you sip weak ale and avoid the dried sausage. Your mouth feels raw from all the scraping. You look around and wonder how anyone gets through this on a daily basis. How does beauty survive in a world with no toothpaste, no floss, and a diet designed to destroy molars? The answer is, it doesn't. Not really. Most people lose teeth young. Smiles gap like old fences. Breath becomes part of the landscape. But still you try. Because even if it hurts, even if it's hopeless, beauty here is a kind of survival. You overhear someone say the bride's family gave her a dowry of 2 goats, and a comb carved from whale bone. You suspect the comb is less for grooming and more for showing off to guests. Another woman whispers that the groom had to confirm she still had most of her teeth before the match was sealed. You take another sip of ale and smile carefully, lips pressed tight. This world isn't easy. It's not kind. But it is consistent. Beauty always costs you something. Sometimes a few teeth. Sometimes your dignity. Sometimes your breath. And still you show up. Smile on. Even if it smells a little like death. You're kneeling by the hearth, comb in hand, trying not to scream. A chunk of your hair has just come out with the comb, again. That makes the third time this week, and you're starting to wonder if your scalp is quietly plotting your downfall. It's not surprising, really. You've been dunking your head in everything from vinegar to nettle tea, not to mention spending hours in the sun trying to bleach your dark locks into something that might pass as blonde. Because in the medieval world, being blonde is practically a divine status symbol. It doesn't matter if your natural color is chestnut, raven, or mouse brown with a hint of dirt. If you want to be admired, desired, or even remotely considered for a flattering tapestry appearance, you need light hair. Golden hair is associated with youth, purity, and saintliness, or, depending on who's describing it, dangerous seduction. Either way, people want it. And you? You don't have it. So you adapt. You soak your hair in chamomile water, then sit in the garden for hours with your tresses spread out like sun-drenched laundry. Sometimes you coat it in saffron and stale urine. You don't talk about that one. It's between you and God. And yes, historians still debate whether these home remedies actually worked, or if the results were just lighter-smelling versions of disappointment. But the desire was real. We have medieval poetry practically obsessed with golden hair, verses comparing it to sunlight, wheat fields, halos, and in one memorable line, a crown of spun honey. You glance over at your friend Elena, who's lucky enough to have naturally fair curls. She hates them. Claims her hair tangles like thistle and smells like sheep when it rains. Still, everyone in town calls her Saint Elena, even though you once caught her sneaking plum wine behind the granary. Meanwhile, your own hair is stick straight and the color of storm-wet bark. You try braiding it to make it look wavier, but it just turns into rope. You're considering wrapping it in strips of damp parchment tonight, an old method that might give you soft waves by morning, assuming the mice don't chew through the paper while you sleep. Wigs exist, sure, but mostly for nobility, or those with very specific reasons to hide their identity. And let's not forget, some wigs are made from actual corpse hair. You shudder. That blonde knight's widow last month? Yeah. Rumor has it she paid handsomely for a flaxen hairpiece sewn from the remains of a nun. Hair consecrated in life, the seller whispered. You hope it was at least washed first. In court circles, blonde hair is elevated to absurd standards. Noble women smear their scalps with crushed lily petals and lie. Some even shave the tops of their heads to make their remaining locks look fuller and lighter. In portraits, artists exaggerate the brightness, adding threads of gold leaf to hair that, in real life, probably looked like mildly dirty straw. And the irony? Many saints, especially female martyrs, are painted as blondes despite being from places where blonde hair is genetically rare. It's not about accuracy. It's about idealization. That glowy, celestial aesthetic. Blonde as moral shorthand. You heard once of a woman who was excommunicated not for adultery, but for wearing a blonde wig that was too alluring. Apparently it distracted 3 monks and 1 bishop. Imagine the church blaming your hair for a spiritual collapse. Classic. So you keep trying. You crush marigold petals into a fine paste and rub them into your hairline. You mix ash from last night's fire with lemon rind and a bit of goat's milk, hoping to create a medieval bleach. It burns. A little. You tell yourself that means it's working. You've read that prostitutes often dyed their hair yellow to attract attention, and to mimic noble fashion without wearing noble clothes. That backfired occasionally. One woman was dragged from a brothel and paraded through the square with her dyed hair shaved off in stripes. Now that is commitment to a trend. At the abbey, nuns cover their hair completely. No fuss, no rituals, no oils or burning scalps. You envy them sometimes. But you also saw one nun crying by a window once, scissors in hand, clutching a lock of hair she was about to surrender. It's not so simple, is it? You return to your own reflection, barely visible in the polished iron plate by the window. Your hair looks less brown today, more like an overripe wheat stalk. You count that as progress. Outside, the children are playing with ribbons, tying them in each other's hair. You remember being that age, when you didn't care what color your hair was, only whether it could hold a braid or not. Now you can't think of it without weighing it against impossible standards, gold like the sun, smooth like silk, untouched by labor or lice. Tonight you'll sleep with your hair twisted around your wrist, hoping the tension pulls it into gentle curves. You'll avoid the hearth, lest the smoke darken your strands. You'll dream of running your fingers through strands of spun light, and waking to find them on your own head. And if not, there's always marigold paste and a fresh sunbeam. You walk into the hall and stop. The smell hits you first, a thick, layered aroma that could be perfume, mildew, and is that onion? Maybe. Maybe it's feet. Maybe both. Whatever it is, it's strong enough to knock over a troubadour. The great irony of medieval beauty is that even when you look like an angel, you probably smell like a pantry disaster. And no, it's not your fault. Baths are rare, water is cold, and everyone seems to agree that washing too much might kill you. You tug your cloak tighter and try not to breathe too deeply. The woman next to you, draped in velvet and pearls, leans close to whisper something. She's lovely, truly. Pale skin, high forehead, hair bleached to near straw. But her breath smells like she's been chewing moldy bread and secrets. You smile politely. Step back. Subtly. And it's not just her. Everyone smells a little. Medieval. Even the nobility, who layer perfumes over their underarms like frosting on a burnt cake. There's rosemary and rose water, ambergris and cloves. But underneath it all is the undeniable base note of people. Warm, sweating, unwashed people wearing 15 layers of wool in a crowded hall with one window cracked open. You didn't bathe this week either. No time. No hot water. And after all, isn't it common knowledge that excessive bathing can invite sickness? That opening your pores is just asking the plague to walk in like it owns the place? Historians still debate whether this was widely believed by everyone or more of an upper-class superstition, but the results are the same. You wash rarely, and with purpose. A full-body bath is a luxury, saved for feast days, marriages, or when the smell of your own feet starts chasing off livestock. Instead, you spot clean. You use a linen cloth to dab at your underarms and neck. Maybe rub your hands with vinegar or a splash of floral water. You've got a pouch of dried lavender hanging from your belt, both as a personal scent booster and, let's be honest, a polite suggestion for anyone standing too close. Your friend Margot swears by rose petal tonic. She dabs it under her chin every morning. It's sweet, overwhelmingly so. You once walked into her house and thought you'd entered a bakery staffed entirely by ghosts. Then there are the more experimental options. One woman in the village recently tried a garlic and wormwood foot rub. The idea was to draw out the humors through scent. Instead, she just cleared out the chapel for an entire afternoon. Even the priest looked queasy. You heard about a nobleman who imported musk from the east, wore it in a tiny jar around his neck, and claimed it made him irresistible. It also made his dog bite him. Still, masking scent is a daily ritual. For women, it's part of the beauty standard. You're expected to glow like a saint and smell like a divine bouquet. Never mind that your last bath was in cold rain, and your last meal had onions in every bite. The church complicates things, of course. Some clergy frown on the use of perfumes, calling them temptations of the flesh. You're supposed to be modest, plain, focused on the soul, not your scent. But those same critics still manage to compliment Lady Adelaide's on her delicate fragrance every time she passes. You try your own recipe. Boil elderflowers. Steep them in old wine. Let the mixture sit until it smells less like rot and more like spring. Then dab it on your neck and wrists. It works. Kind of. until the warmth of your skin cooks it into something resembling spiced cabbage. There's a fringe method that involves burning herbs and waving the smoke through your hair. It sounds dramatic, but it's popular at the monastery. You try it once. Your veil catches a spark. You spend the next hour swatting embers and muttering oaths. Never again. Sometimes you envy the people who don't care. The peasants who walk around reeking of soil and sun and don't apologize for it. There's a shepherd who smells like sheep and pine sap, and still somehow gets more attention than half the perfumed lords. But you're not that free. You're still in the game. Still expected to look and smell like a dream, while living in a nightmare of damp clothes, shared baths, and rot. At dinner that night you eat in silence, pushing leeks around your plate. Your linen underdress sticks to your back. Your hair smells faintly of old wood smoke and rosemary. It's not ideal, but it's survivable. You glance across the table and see Sir Roland, supposedly the handsomest man in the county, sneeze directly into his sleeve, then scratch his armpit with a spoon. Romantic. You decide you'll boil more lavender tomorrow. Maybe even throw in some crushed cloves. Something light, floral, but strong enough to overpower goat. Because beauty in this world isn't just seen, it's smelled. And if you're going to suffer through plucked brows and lead paste, you might as well throw in a little rose water to sweeten the deal. You take a deep breath, and immediately regret it. The bodice digs into your ribs like it's trying to apologize for your entire skeletal structure. You haven't sat down in hours because sitting might crease the fabric, and God forbid your posture slacken in front of company. You're wearing what can only be described as a medieval torture device masquerading as fashion, the girdle. Not the stretchy undergarment your modern brain might be imagining. No, this is a stiff, tightly laced band of leather and cloth that wraps around your waist and compresses everything below your lungs into a panicked bundle. Breathing? Optional. Eating? Impractical. Appearing upright and virtuous? Absolutely essential. In this world, a tightly bound figure signifies discipline, purity, self-control. It whispers to onlookers, "I have mastered my body, and probably also your inheritance." You lean forward slightly, testing the edge of comfort. The girdle immediately reminds you who's boss. The edges dig into your skin. Somewhere beneath the layers, your stomach growls, both hungry and compressed into a dimension it doesn't belong to. You ignore it. This is just what's expected. A laced torso is a modest torso. Loose garments are for the sick, the lazy, or the scandalous. Even among peasants, a belt drawn tight over the girdle suggests virtue, and tight belts mean you can't possibly be indulging in sin or pastries. You walk across the room, carefully, because even turning too fast could make the girdle pinch a nerve you didn't know you had. At least it's not made of whalebone like the rumors say the queen wears. Yours is mostly hemp cord and hard cloth. But it still holds everything in a kind of medieval hostage situation. Historians still argue whether girdles in daily medieval life were more symbolic or practical, but for wealthier women especially, they played a visible role in shaping both form and judgment. You could see who was laced, and who wasn't. You remember once seeing a woman whose girdle slipped during a feast. The room went quiet. Someone whispered the word loose, and it wasn't about the garment. The look on her face. Pure horror. She yanked it tighter, gasping slightly, and smiled like nothing happened. No one smiled back. There are men who praise a woman's ability to carry herself with dignity, a vague phrase that always seems to mean she looked pretty and didn't fall over while starving. You're beginning to realize the true art here is not the beauty. It's the endurance. You pass by a mirror, well, a shiny piece of polished bronze hanging on a hook, and catch your silhouette. Your waist is unnaturally narrow, your chest flattened beneath layers, your ribs visibly struggling. You're a swan, if swans were being slowly strangled by linen. But it's working. Sort of. A passing merchant calls you. Refined. You don't know if that means pretty, modest, or vaguely unconscious. Either way, you curtsy. You feel a stitch in your side. You rise, smiling tightly. In the corner of the hall, An older woman unlaces her bodice while sitting near the fire. She groans with relief. You envy her. She's past the age where anyone expects her to keep up with these standards. No more girdles. No more whispered judgments. For a moment, you consider loosening your own ties, just one notch. No one's looking. You reach around your back. Tug the cord just slightly. Freedom. You breathe. Your lungs expand. The world re-enters color. And yet, before you can enjoy it too long, you hear footsteps. A gasp. A young girl points. Her waist. You freeze. Fasten the cord back. Smile again. Tight-lipped. Practiced. It's not just about the girdle itself. It's what it symbolizes. Control. Chastity. Self-denial. You aren't supposed to be comfortable. You're supposed to be good. There's a fringe group of women, mostly widows, who have started tying their girdles in public with decorative knots. A quiet rebellion. They call them prayer belts, but everyone knows they're just tired of fainting at festivals. You wonder if you could join them one day. At dinner, you pick at your food. Bread crust. A slice of roasted carrot. Nothing more. The girdle doesn't allow indulgence. One full breath and your seams might give out in front of half the nobility. You overhear a lady claiming she hasn't removed her girdle in 6 days. She looks victorious. She also looks like she hasn't sat down since Tuesday. You sigh and sip watered wine, your ribs gently screaming. Across the table, a young man stares at you with admiration. Or confusion. Or maybe he's just wondering how you're still upright. Later, alone in your chamber, you untie the cords with shaking fingers. It feels like peeling off a second skin. Red marks line your waist. You run your hand along them, softly. You didn't ask for this standard. But you met it. And tomorrow? You'll do it again. You wake up starving. Not just. I could nibble on something. Hungry, truly, epically empty. Your stomach has been protesting since dawn, and now it sounds like a dying goat. But there's no breakfast yet. And even when it comes, you'll have to be careful. Because here in the Middle Ages, beauty has rules, and your body? It's stuck between two equally terrifying extremes. Too thin, and people assume you're sick, cursed, or crawling with plague. Too fat, and they call you greedy, slothful, possibly sinful. The sweet spot is a delicate balance, soft but not too soft. Curvy, but only in the fertile, not indulgent way. Robust, but heaven forbid you jiggle in the wrong places. You stand and tug on your girdle. It fits, barely. You tied it tighter last week, trying to look more modest. Now your stomach presses against the seams like bread dough rising too fast. You hold your breath, smooth your hands over your hips, and tell yourself you look virtuous. Not swollen. Definitely not gluttonous. There's no scale to obsess over here. No number to chase. But there are eyes. And comments. And every time you walk into the village square, someone is noticing, subtly, loudly, or with a raised eyebrow and a well-aimed slice of side eye. At the market, a fishmonger calls out, "You're looking well fed today, my lady." It's meant as a compliment. Sort of. You force a smile and keep walking, cheeks burning. You remember what happened to Annette, the miller's daughter. A year of poor harvests left her looking gaunt, sunken. People stopped calling her beautiful. They started calling her unlucky. One neighbor even crossed herself when Annette walked past, muttering something about ill omens. When she caught the fever that spring, no one was surprised. So you eat just enough. You pass on the goose fat but accept the barley stew. You decline the honey nuts but sneak a pear into your pouch for later. Eating is a calculation. Every bite has to be weighed, not in grams, but in judgment. Historians still argue whether the average woman in the medieval period really thought this much about weight. After all, starvation was a constant threat for many, especially peasants. But in the courts, in the churches, in the stories that trickle down through ballads and paintings, the ideal body is discussed, drawn, and, most importantly, measured. There's that famous tapestry of Queen Isolde, her waist the width of a branch, her hips soft but firm, her face delicately rounded. You saw it once, in the manor hall. Stared at it for minutes. Wondered how many fasting days it took to look that divine. Then there's the other side of the coin, abundance. In certain circles, especially among the wealthy, a fuller figure implies prosperity. You have food. You have leisure. You don't work the fields. You eat pomegranates for fun. But that window is razor thin. A little too full, and suddenly you're a punchline. The court jester once made a joke about a lady who ate her way out of marriage. He was clapped on the back for it. She didn't come to the next feast. In secret, some women turned to strange solutions. You've heard of one who tried to purge herself with a brew of licorice and vinegar. Another who drank only broth for a month until she fainted during Mass. One noblewoman was even rumored to wear a wooden girdle under her dress, not to shape her body, but to keep herself from eating more than what fit in the rigid ring. Then there are the fertility expectations. Your body must be healthy enough to bear children, but never imply that you enjoy the act that makes them. It must hint at sensuality without inviting it. You once overheard a priest say, "A holy woman is a candle, light without heat." You still don't know what that means, but it sounds miserable. You get home and peel off your outer garments. Your underdress clings in the places it shouldn't. You sit by the fire with your pear and stare at it for a long time. Then you eat it slowly, savoring each bite like it might be your last act of rebellion. Outside, boys are racing in the mud. A dog barks joyfully. The world doesn't care about waistlines or cheekbones. But inside this little structure, your body, your role, your reflection, it matters. You remember being younger, when food was just food. When you snuck cheese from the larder, and no one cared how it shaped your future. Now every bite is a brushstroke on the painting of your life, and every curve is a whisper, desirable or disgraced. You lie down, feeling the press of dinner still lingering against your bodice. Not full. Not empty. Balanced. Tomorrow, you'll eat bread with restraint. Walk an extra round to the well. Maybe skip the honey. Or maybe you won't. Maybe you'll risk a second pair. Because in this strange, medieval dance of flesh and virtue, you're trying to be both visible and invisible. You're crouched by the hearth again, mixing something in a chipped wooden bowl that smells like wet fur and scorched toast. This is your skincare routine now. You poke at the mixture with a twig, sheep fat, powdered ash, a pinch of dried sage, and a drop of vinegar. It's supposed to smooth your complexion and lighten those unfortunate freckles that showed up last spring. You dab a bit on your cheek. It sizzles. Beauty hurts. You already know that. But medieval skincare? It doesn't just hurt, it confuses, terrifies, and probably shortens your life expectancy. You glance at your reflection in the window pane. It's faint, distorted, but enough to see the red mark forming. Excellent. That means it's working, right? In the Middle Ages, good skin isn't just about looking youthful. It's about appearing pure, untouched by labor or sin. The fewer blemishes, the more divine you appear. A smooth, white face signals cleanliness of soul. Acne? Freckles? Scars? That's the devil's playground. And so you slather. You've tried them all. Crushed oyster shells to scrub the skin, goose fat for moisture, and once, a paste made from rabbit brains and crushed mint. That one gave you a rash that lasted a fortnight. There's a woman in the village who sells moon cream, claiming she makes it by mixing rosewater and wax under a full moon. You bought a jar once. It smelled like moldy bees. Didn't stop you from using it. Historians still argue whether medieval women used these mixtures daily or only for special events, but recipes for fair skin show up in all kinds of surviving texts, from apothecary manuals to advice poems. Some ingredients seem logical, others less so. Like mercury. Yes, mercury. Someone once told you a tiny dab could burn away blemishes. You tried it. Just once. Your skin turned gray for a week, and your fingertips went numb. You buried the bottle in the woods and said a prayer over it. You've read of noble women who paid entire salaries to foreign alchemists for skin treatments involving crushed gemstones and frog bile. One lady allegedly applied a paste of dried mouse dung and honey. Another mixed her own blood with rose petals and declared it cleansing. You don't have that kind of budget, or tolerance for rodents. Then there are the masks. Not silk or cloth, but thick pastes that harden as they dry. You tried one made of egg white and flour. It felt like your face had been baked. When you peeled it off, it took a few tiny hairs with it. You screamed into your pillow for 20 minutes. Of course, you can't just cover up bad skin with makeup, because too much paint and you're suddenly a temptress. Or worse, a suspected witch. There's a very fine line between enhanced and possessed. One wrong tint of rouge, and someone starts whispering about night visits from demons. You once saw a girl get accused of sorcery because her skin was too smooth to be natural. Her family insisted she just used elderflower oil. The priest wasn't convinced. She ended up fasting in the chapel for 7 days as penance. So, your skincare rituals are done in secret, behind closed shutters. You light a candle, mash your herbs, apply your paste. You pray your skin accepts the treatment without rebellion. Right now, it doesn't seem to be. You press a damp cloth to your cheek where the ash mixture is still sizzling slightly. The skin there is red, angry, a bit raw. You mutter a few unladylike words. Your grandmother would be horrified. You remember what she used to say. The Virgin didn't need rosewater, and neither do you. But she also boiled cabbage so aggressively the smell never left her apron. So you take her advice with a grain of salt, and a splash of goat milk toner. There's a fringe trend going around involving snail trails. Supposedly, the slime left behind is healing. You saw a girl sitting with snails on her face last week. You couldn't decide whether to laugh or cry. She looked serene though. Maybe that's part of it, resignation as radiance. Later, as you sit by the fire, the skin on your cheeks tightens. You feel like a clay pot left too long in the kiln. But your reflection shows a slight glow. Or maybe it's just the firelight. Either way, it's better than yesterday. Your friend Beatrix swears by a morning ritual where she dips her face in cold well water then rubs it with thyme leaves. You tried it once. It was brisk. But her skin does look like polished ivory. You sigh. Tomorrow you'll try the snail thing. Maybe. Unless the snails rebel. You lie down for bed with your face still sticky, your pores tingling from herb residue, and your pillow faintly smelling of vinegar and mint. You've done what you can. Because in the medieval world, beauty isn't effortless. It's not about luxury. It's not about pampering. It's about surviving the weirdest ingredients nature and desperation can offer, and still showing up at the festival with a straight back, a soft glow, and only a mild rash. You sit in the shadow of the garden wall, grinding beetroot with a mortar and pestle, your fingers stained a deep pink that refuses to wash off. Your hands look like you've just committed a minor murder, but you're not planning anything sinister. You're just trying to blush. Because tonight is a celebration, and you need a little color on your cheeks. Just a touch, though. Too much, and someone will say you're provocative. Too little, and they'll whisper about illness or bad humors. Welcome to the delicate art of medieval blushing, a balance between saintly glow and seductive scandal. You scoop a dab of the mixture onto your thumb and gently rub it along the apple of your cheek. It burns slightly. That's normal. Maybe. The beetroot is mixed with vinegar and a drop of egg white to help it stick. You've also heard of people using crushed mulberries, saffron, or, if you're very bold, red ochre dusted directly onto the skin with a cloth. Historians still debate how widespread these rouge recipes were. Some believe only wealthy women used them, aided by servants and secret apothecaries. Others suggest even peasants improvised cheek tints using garden scraps and kitchen leftovers. One thing's for certain, rouge is everywhere in the poetry and paintings, even if no one openly admits to using it. You finish the second cheek and tilt your face toward the light. It's subtle, youthful, alive, perfect. You smile, pleased. But then the breeze picks up, and suddenly your scarf lifts. A nun walking by catches sight of your reddened face. She freezes, stares, then scowls. You quickly drop your head and pretend to be searching for a turnip. You hear her sandals scuff away across the path, judgment in every step. Because here's the thing, even though blush is admired in portraits, praised in songs, and adored in secret, using it is officially frowned upon. Church doctrine labels it vanity. Some priests even preach that a woman who paints her face invites demonic attention. Which might explain why Brother Lucian won't look you in the eye anymore. And yet, the same men who condemn you will turn around and write songs about cheeks kissed by roses, and maidens with the flush of innocence. As if blushing is something you can conjure on command. As if emotions in circulation should always cooperate for your social calendar. You remember your cousin Eleanor's wedding. She was so nervous, You wake up scratching your chin. That's never a good sign. There's a new patch of hair sprouting, soft, dark, and absolutely unacceptable. You sit up, grab the cracked piece of mirror you keep under your cot, and groan. Yep. There it is. A faint but undeniably visible sprig of fuzz just under your jawline. You sigh. It's going to be another one of those days. Because in this medieval world, hair doesn't belong everywhere. Your scalp? Sure. Your eyebrows, barely. But chin, upper lip, arms, legs? Not unless you want to be mistaken for a traveling minstrel named Gerald. The expectations are brutally clear, even if no one talks about them directly. You pull your cloak tighter around you and shuffle toward the hearth. Today's project, hair removal. Old-fashioned, painful, and deeply experimental. There are options, of course. Most of them horrifying. First up, the quicklime paste. You fish out a clay pot from under the cupboard. It's filled with a gray, chalky substance that smells like chalk and regret. Your cousin made it last week. Quicklime, arsenic, vinegar, and some oil to soothe the burn. She said it worked wonders. You're skeptical. But this patch of hair isn't going to melt itself. So you mix the paste with a bit of egg yolk and smear it along your jaw. It tingles immediately. Then it burns. You count to 20. Then 30. Then rip it off with a strip of cloth, like peeling the gilt off a confession. You check the mirror again. The hair is gone. So is most of your upper layer of skin. Historians still debate whether these intense depilatories were widely used or mostly found in elite circles, passed down in manuscripts like magical curses. Recipes from the Trotula, a famous medieval medical text written by or attributed to a woman, include blends of lime and orpiment. That's arsenic sulfide, by the way. It's toxic. It's effective. It's insane. You rinse your face with cold water and pat it dry. There's redness. There's throbbing. But the fuzz is gone. Success? Then you remember your legs. Yes, those too. Not every woman bothers. But if you're planning to wear finer stockings to the upcoming midsummer feast, you really don't want your leg hairs poking through like rebellious straw. So you heat some honey over the fire, mix it with flour and lemon juice, and smear the sticky goop across your shin. When it cools, you yank. You don't scream, but only because your mouth is full of a rag. Waxing. Before it was cool. You finish both legs and lie flat on the floor like a martyr, limbs numb, soul departed. There are easier methods, of course. Some women singe off body hair with candles. A little fire, a little prayer, and a lot of smoke. You tried that once. Singed your hem and nearly lost your eyebrows. Others swear by pumice stones. Just scrub until the hair rubs off. And most of your skin with it. A few bold ones pluck, strand by strand, using fishbone tweezers and unholy patience. You admire them. From afar. Then there's the fringe trick you heard from a traveling midwife, rubbing your skin with a paste made from walnut shells and ash. Supposedly slows hair regrowth. Probably stains everything in sight. The irony? All this pain and effort, and no one's allowed to mention it. You can't openly say, "Oh yes, I arsenic burned my chin to be more presentable." That would be vain, or suspicious, or French. So instead, everyone pretends that their skin is naturally smooth, that they were born without leg hair, that their jawlines have never met a whisker. But we all know. You remember the time Lady Bridget fainted during Vespers? The servants whispered it wasn't hunger or heat stroke. It was a rash from her new depilatory cream, made with basil, lye, and crushed snail shell. Her face swelled for a week. Still, she looked stunning by the next feast. And yet a girl in your village was once scolded by the priest's sister for using a razor to shave her forearms. Unholy vanity, she called it. You wonder what she'd think of your quicklime arsenic facial. As the day winds down, your skin is raw, your knees ache, and your arms feel like cooked noodles. But you're hairless. Mostly. And that counts for something. You soak a cloth in lavender water and lay it across your face. The sting fades slowly. You smell like a garden that's just survived a fire. You lie there, wondering why anyone ever decided smooth skin meant beauty. Why the absence of something natural became a sign of virtue. Historians still argue about that too. But for now you're clean. You're ready. You're brave. And you're definitely not sitting near any open flames for a while. You sit by the window, darning a sock, when you feel it again, that little bump on your shoulder blade. You reach back and touch it. It's small, round, and just slightly raised. Probably a mole. Or maybe a bug bite. Or maybe the beginning of the end. Because in this medieval world, the line between beauty mark and witch's teats is frighteningly thin. You stand and walk toward the cracked mirror above the wash basin, twisting your arm to catch a glimpse of the spot. It's barely visible. Just a dot. But in this society, dots have power. A mole in the right place? Enchanting. A mole in the wrong place? Heretical. Sinister. Dangerous. You sit back down, heartbeat ticking a little faster. You've heard the stories. We all have. A girl in the next village over had a freckle behind her ear. When a cow gave birth to a stillborn calf 3 fields over, people remembered the freckle. Claimed they saw her speaking to birds. Claimed she walked too silently. And just like that, she was stripped, searched, and locked away. The so-called devil's mark could be anything. A scar. A birthmark. A mole. A pimple. Anything unusual, permanent, or located somewhere. Secret. You've known girls who burned off blemishes with hot pins, just to avoid suspicion. And yet, paradoxically, there's this strange admiration for beauty marks in the right context. In the courtly world of troubadours and tapestries, a small mole above the lip or beside the eye is often praised as a sign of charm. An accent, like a delicate jewel placed by God. Entire poems have been written about a single dot on a noblewoman's cheek. Historians still argue whether this double standard was conscious, or just another example of medieval society's love of contradictions. What's alluring in a princess can be damning in a milkmaid. You stare at your reflection again. That freckle by your temple, is it cute? Or suspicious? Earlier today, you overheard a crone at the well saying, "I don't trust any girl with spots she won't explain." Explain? As if you had tea with a demon and he gave you a parting gift? There are witch prickers, now, men paid to find the devil's mark on accused women. They poke the skin with pins, looking for places that don't bleed or feel pain. You once saw a demonstration. It made your stomach turn. The woman didn't cry. She just closed her eyes and recited a prayer. She didn't come back from that trial. You think about that as you rub your own skin raw, hoping the mark disappears. It doesn't. Later, you tie a scarf around your shoulders, making sure it covers the spot. Just in case. It's not vanity. It's survival. You remember your friend Margot, who has a large mole on her thigh. She calls it her lucky charm. She also hasn't worn anything above the ankle in years. She scrubs it every night with a rough stone. One day, she tried to cut it off with a sharpened sliver of shell. It got infected. The fever nearly killed her. There are remedies, of course. Some swear by onion poultices. Others recommend lemon juice, vinegar, or ash rubbed in daily. One woman claimed that bathing in milk from a black goat under a full moon would erase all blemishes. She also wore garlic around her neck and hissed at mirrors, so her credibility was mixed. The worst part is, you don't even have to have a mark to be accused. You just need someone to say you do. Last autumn, a midwife was dragged out of her hut because someone claimed she had a third nipple. A teat for suckling familiars, they said. You didn't even know what a familiar was. The midwife did. She spat at the judge and declared him dumber than a goose. She vanished before the week was out. And now, with this bump on your back, you wonder, if someone were angry with you, jealous, petty, vindictive, would that be enough? The absurdity of it all hits you like cold water. This society tells you to be flawless, but if you come too close, they'll call you unnatural. You're expected to glow, but not shine. To be smooth, but not suspiciously so. A walking contradiction in heeled boots and modest linen. You finally settle into bed, the mark still covered, your thoughts still racing. You whisper a quiet prayer to Saint Apollonia, the patron saint of ailments, and in your case, maybe also minor skin irregularities. You fall asleep wondering whether the spot will fade, whether it will grow, whether someone will notice, whether they'll ask questions, whether you'll have answers, and whether, in a world where beauty can be dangerous and blemishes even more so, you'll ever feel safe in your own skin. You lean over the wooden basin, staring into your own eyes, trying to decide if today is a day for bravery or for vision. Because you've got a tiny vial in your hand. Inside, belladonna. You shake it gently. The liquid sloshes, thick and dark, like melted ink. The vial stopper is waxed shut, as if someone once tried to protect the world from its contents. You pop it open anyway. The goal? Big, wide, beautiful eyes. The kind that troubadours write poems about. Eyes like the moon, they say. Eyes like deep wells, or stars, or candle flames. No one writes about squinting. No one sings about crow's feet or a furrowed brow. They want doe-eyed, innocent, ethereal. And belladonna? That'll do it. A single drop in each eye will dilate your pupils, make them look larger, darker, more alluring. It was all the rage among certain noblewomen, especially in Italy. You heard once that the Queen of Naples used it every day, even when it made her vision blur until she walked into a wall. You lie back and tip your head. One drop. Then two. You blink. The world doesn't change immediately, but you feel it coming, a strange warmth behind your eyes. Your heart beats faster. Your pupils widen. The room grows dimmer, like dusk descending far too early. You catch your reflection again. Your eyes look enormous, shadowed, hypnotic, a little like a porcelain doll, a little like someone who's just seen a ghost. You smile, a small, triumphant thing. Then you stumble. Because while the belladonna might make your eyes beautiful, it also messes with your sight. Everything looks hazy now, soft around the edges. You feel slightly dizzy. You reach for the table and miss by a good 3 inches. There's a sharp knock at the door. You flinch. Your heart races. You blink again and try to focus. It's just Margot, come to borrow rosemary. You fumble your way to the herbs and try not to squint like you've been staring into the sun. She eyes you suspiciously. Are you all right? You nod too quickly. Just tired. She doesn't believe you, but she doesn't push. When she leaves, you sit back down, clutching the edge of the table with both hands. It takes a few minutes for the spinning to slow. But you glance into the mirror again and yes, your eyes are stunning. Historians still debate how widespread belladonna use was, or whether its reputation outpaced its actual application. But references to eye drops that enlarge and enchant appear in several 13th and 14th century texts. The side effects, of course, are always underplayed. You've heard whispers about noblewomen who went blind, about maids who tried it and couldn't stop crying for hours, about one girl who mixed the drops with wine and drank them by accident. She woke up 3 days later asking what year it was. But still, you try. Because beauty demands sacrifice. And because your natural eyes, greenish-brown and a little uneven, have never earned a poem. No one's ever called them starlit. But they might now. You recall that the ideal eyes, according to the old manuscripts, should be clear, round, and moist. A strange checklist that reads more like an instruction for a fresh fish than a human face. And yet, it's repeated again and again in poetry, art, and even courtship manuals. Eyes are the windows to the soul, they say. But in this world, they're also the showroom. If yours look tired, you must be lazy. If they're red, you're diseased. If they squint, you're dishonest. And if they're small, well, try harder. Some girls draw faint lines around their eyes with charcoal to make them pop. You tried that once and nearly blinded yourself when a piece crumbled into your lashes. It also made you look like a raccoon who lost a fight. But in dim light, it almost worked. Others keep their eyes damp with herbal steam, hovering over hot mugs of fennel and lavender just to get that teary, glistening look. One noblewoman supposedly trained herself not to blink for minutes at a time. Her court nickname was the Swan. Behind her back, people called her the Statue. You rub your temples. The effects of the drops are fading, but you're left with a headache. A small price to pay. Outside, a storm is rolling in. Clouds gather, making the world appropriately gloomy. You wrap a shawl around your shoulders and sit by the window, pretending to read. Really, you're watching? Waiting. The young man from the butcher's stall walks by. He glances up at your window. Your eyes, still wide, catch the light just enough to glimmer. He stares for half a second longer than usual. You smile to yourself. Victory. And yes, maybe your vision is still blurry. And yes, your pupils will take hours to return to normal. And yes, you'll probably spend the rest of the day squinting at shadows like a mole that's lost its way. But you'll look beautiful doing it. You purse your lips in the mirror. Well, in the piece of polished tin that pretends to be a mirror, and wonder for the 100th time if your mouth looks wicked. Not wide enough to be seductive, but not small enough to be innocent. A mouth that says, I might sing a hymn, or I might curse your fields. And honestly, even you aren't sure which. In the medieval world, your lips speak volumes even before you open them. Full lips might suggest sensuality, or sin. Thin lips, piety, or bitterness. And that natural flush you woke up with this morning? Better hide it before someone thinks you've been consorting with demons again. You reach for your little jar of color. It's dried rose petal paste, ground fine with goose fat and a hint of red clay. You dab a bit onto your finger and apply it lightly to your bottom lip. Then pause. Is that too much? You rub some off with your sleeve, leaving just a hint of hue, what you hope says pious charm, rather than temptress with a forked tongue. Lip coloring in this era is a quiet rebellion. It's praised in poetry, shamed in sermons, and whispered about behind doors that don't quite close all the way. Troubadours write of women with lips like ripe cherries, like crushed rubies, like the blood of saints. Yes, even that was somehow romanticized. But those same men might leave a feast and accuse the barmaid of witchcraft if her mouth looks too red in candlelight. The line between desirable and dangerous is, once again, razor thin. Historians still argue whether lip cosmetics were part of everyday life or reserved for very specific circumstances: weddings, courtship, court performances. But recipe books from apothecaries contain instructions for all kinds of lip stains, usually made from herbs, berries, animal fats, or beeswax, and sometimes something a little darker. You once heard about a noblewoman who tinted her lips with crushed cochineal beetles imported through Italian merchants. That's commitment. And also why her maid kept fainting at the scent. Meanwhile, you're still using berries. Crushed sloes, elderberries, sometimes even wine dregs if they're dark enough. You have to be careful though. Too much, and your teeth look purple. And don't get it on your tunic. Margot still hasn't gotten hers clean from that one misjudged plum smear. The church, of course, disapproves. Red lips tempt the soul to wander, your priest once said. Then he spent 15 minutes staring at Lady Isabeau, who had the rosiest lips in the Shire and definitely wasn't born with them. You've even heard of girls scrubbing their mouths with ash or salt to make them look paler, less inviting. One girl rubbed hers with nettle leaves until they swelled and cracked. "Better chapped than cursed," she said with a smile, and a wince. "You tried that once, too. The salt, not the nettles. It left your lips raw and dry for 3 days. You didn't smile once." Then there are the romantic superstitions. They say if you bite your lip and make a wish under a waxing moon, your true love will dream of you. You did it last week. Still no dreams, unless he was the strange figure chasing you with a lute. Not ideal. Some say if your lips are too red, you're possessed. Too pale, you're ill. Too full, you're impure. Too thin, you're a spinster in training. There's no winning here. At the feast tonight, you sit with the other girls near the fire. The light flickers against your mouth, highlighting that faint tint. You catch someone watching. A merchant's son, maybe? Or a stable hand with ambitions. He quickly looks away when you glance back. You feel that tug in your stomach again, the familiar dance between wanting to be seen and not too seen. Admired but not discussed. Praised but never named. Someone leans over and comments, "Your lips are like rosebuds." You blink. Then nod carefully. "Thank you?" You do not tell them you crushed actual rosebuds on a stone slab this morning to make that happen. Because that would be vanity. And vanity? Leads to ruin. Or so they say. You sip your ale slowly, trying not to smudge the color. Trying to appear effortlessly perfect. Trying to look like someone who never tries. Later, at home, you wipe your mouth with a linen cloth. The stain comes off, leaving a faint smear. Your lips feel dry now. Tired. You press your fingers to them and think about everything they're expected to say, without ever opening. And tomorrow, you'll wake up, crush more petals, and try again. Because even in a world full of contradictions, the right lips can open doors. And the wrong ones? Well, they can still smile, quietly, rebelliously, beautifully. You're crouched in the dim corner of your room, elbow deep in a mortar filled with yellow flower petals, a splash of lye water, and something that smells alarmingly like spoiled beer. This is your 4th attempt at going blonde, and if the concoction doesn't lighten your hair, it might at least scare the lice away. Because in this world, blonde isn't just a hair color, it's a moral alignment. Golden hair means goodness, purity, holiness, or, depending on the poem, irresistible temptation. Either way, everyone wants it, and if you weren't born with it, well, grab your herbs and pray for a miracle. You mash the petals harder, channeling frustration into pulp. Your natural hair is dark brown. Stubborn. Unyielding. Not evil, exactly, but certainly not saintly. Not when compared to the sun-haired heroines in every love ballad and illuminated manuscript. You remember Lady Eleonora, with her almost white curls, practically glowing in candlelight. People say her hair is kissed by angels. People also forget she gossips like a sailor, and once tried to poison her husband with spoiled pork. But no one cares. Because she looks like virtue. Historians still argue whether the obsession with blonde hair came from religious iconography, think golden halos, radiant Madonnas, or from Northern European influences brought into Southern courts. Either way, by the 12th century, being blonde wasn't just beautiful, it was political. Blondes were painted into sainthood, stitched into tapestries, and married off before their darker-haired cousins could even finish their embroidery samplers. And so you work? Your current mixture is a folk remedy from an old herbal, marigold, alum, crushed fennel, and sun exposure. Lots of sun exposure. You'll sit by the open window for hours with your hair stretched out like drying laundry, hoping the rays cook the potion just right. It's summer, so there's at least that. You part your hair into thin sections and begin applying the goo. It's sticky. Smells like boiled weeds and sourdough. You try not to think about it. Just keep going. There are other methods too. Riskier ones. Some women soak their hair in lye water, yes, lye, and bleach it nearly white. Others use ash from specific woods, mixed with crushed eggshells. One daring noblewoman was said to coat her head in goat urine. Every day. For a month. She lost half her hair. Kept the other half in a braided crown. Everyone praised her dedication. Then there's the dangerous, expensive stuff, saffron. Real saffron, imported from far-off lands, so costly it could feed your whole family for a week. A few strands, boiled and steeped, create a brilliant golden rinse. But you'd have to be mad or married to royalty to waste it on your scalp. You sit in the sun, potion dripping down your back, and dream of being one of the lucky ones. Of waking up with honey-colored waves that shimmer in morning light. Of being described with the word, radiant, without anyone snickering behind your back. You remember a traveling bard who once sang, "Her hair, like sunlit grain, made angels forget to breathe." You weren't sure if that was poetry or a minor theological offense. Still, the audience swooned. But it's not just poetry. Blonde hair is a status symbol. It separates peasants from nobility, saint from sinner, wife from wench. That's why prostitutes in some cities bleach their hair too. To appear fashionable. To mimic courtly beauty. To attract attention. In Venice, you heard they sit on rooftop terraces with wide-brimmed hats that expose only their hair, letting the sun do its slow, golden work. But this imitation can backfire. Too bright hair on the wrong woman invites suspicion. Jealousy. Accusations. You think of Annalise, the girl from the next village. She dyed her hair with onion skins and lemon rind, hoping to lighten it before festival season. When a nobleman flirted with her at the midsummer dance, his wife started a rumor that Annalise had used unnatural means. 3 weeks later, Annalise's hair was cut off in public as penance for vanity. She wears a hood now. Never smiles. The wind picks up. Your hair, still damp with your mixture, flutters like stringy hay. You feel ridiculous. But maybe, just maybe, by tomorrow it will have lightened a shade. You glance down at your arms, burning slightly. You forgot to cover them again. Pale skin and blonde hair, the double standard of virtue. If you come out too tan, you'll have to douse yourself in vinegar for days to reverse it. Again. You rinse your hair that evening in cold well water. It smells less terrible now. Maybe even a little floral. You towel it off with rough linen and stare at the mirror. Is it lighter? Kind of. If you squint. In candlelight. While turning your head just so. It'll do. You lie in bed, hair spread out like a halo, and wonder how many more days of sun, how many more petals and herbs and prayers it will take before someone glances at you and says, "Look at her. Golden, like the saints." And if that never happens? Well, at least you've tried. At least you smelled like a salad for a week in the name of beauty. That counts for something. You wake before dawn, wrapped in your blanket and a low-grade existential crisis. Because today, like every day, your worth will be measured not just by what you do, but by how you look. And not in some fun, sparkly, self-expression kind of way. No. In the deeply medieval, soul-scouring, eternal consequences kind of way. Your appearance is more than a reflection. It's a moral test. A verdict waiting to be passed. Here, in this era of saints and sinners, people don't just believe beauty is skin deep. They believe it goes all the way down to the soul. You rub your face with cold water from the basin and catch sight of yourself in the mirror shard. Tired eyes. A spot forming near your chin. Lips dry from the wind. None of this bodes well for your moral standing. Because in this world, ugliness isn't just unfortunate. It's suspicious. A wart? A sign of the devil. A crooked nose? Probably cursed. Pockmarks? Clearly a punishment from God, or a sign that you have something to atone for. The idea that a person's outer appearance reflects their inner virtue is deeply rooted in medieval thought. Beautiful people are assumed to be good. Ugliness is, in many circles, a divine warning label. Historians still debate just how widespread this belief was, and whether it shaped real social outcomes or just filtered into the religious texts and sermons. But there's no denying it shows up everywhere, in art, in literature, in how people are remembered. You think of that carving in the church nave, the one of Saint Agnes, hair like flowing light, skin unmarred, hands folded in beatific serenity. Below her? The demon she vanquished, face twisted, mouth gaping, eyes bulging unnaturally. The lesson is clear: goodness is beautiful. Evil is ugly. There is no middle ground. But where does that leave the rest of us? You know a woman named Johanna who lost an eye to illness when she was young. Her face is forever marked by the wound. She is kind, gentle, feeds the poor. But people cross themselves when she walks by. She's never married. Not because she's unloved, but because she doesn't look holy. Then there's Brother Lucien, young, handsome, golden-voiced. He barely speaks above a whisper, but half the village hangs on his every word. He could read from a recipe book and still be praised for his divine insight. Once, during confession, you admitted to jealousy. He forgave you, smiled, said, "God gives each of us a light to carry." You wanted to ask why some lights come with cheekbones. The idea that beauty reflects virtue isn't just religious, it's social armor. A beautiful woman might be poor, but she's often helped. A plain one? Overlooked. A repellent one? Suspected. Avoided. Even accused. It's why so many of us do the daily rituals. The powders. The plucking. The painful pastes and awkward braids. We're not just trying to be attractive. We're trying to look good. As in, not evil. Not sinful. Not damned. You once heard a monk say, "A woman's face is a window. Let it not darken with sin." You weren't sure what that meant. Still aren't. But it haunted you for days. In your little box of treasures, you keep a dried violet, a ribbon you once wore at Easter, and a smooth stone. You rub the stone now, like it holds answers. It doesn't. But it feels cool in your hand. Real. Unjudging. Outside, the village is waking up. The baker's boy runs by with flour on his cheek. The blacksmith's daughter pulls her hair into a messy knot. You see them, ordinary, human, flawed, and beautiful, in ways the paintings never show. You wonder, if you lived in a time where beauty wasn't equated with moral worth, would your days be easier? Would you smile more? Would you worry less about the spot on your chin or the way your eyebrows meet just slightly too soon? There's a girl named Lisette who laughs like rain hitting stone. Her teeth are crooked. Her nose strong. She's never once been called beautiful. But she's adored. Because in rare moments, kindness wins. In stolen seconds, personality breaks through paint. Still, you smooth your hair before stepping out. Still, you pinch your cheeks before the mirror. Because no matter how you feel, you have to look right. And looking right means looking good. And looking good means looking blameless. It's exhausting. But you do it anyway. Because in the medieval mind, the devil might wear many disguises, but he never looks like a saint. And today, at least, you're going to try to pass for one. You step into the great hall of the manor house, boots still damp from the walk through morning dew, and your breath catches, not from the cold, but from the walls. Tapestries. Everywhere. Rich blues, gold threads glimmering in the lamplight, scenes of courtly love and pious virtue stretching across linen like windows into a world that never quite existed. In one, a woman reclines beneath a tree, her hair cascading like silk down her back, her lips perfectly tinted, her skin luminous and so smooth it may as well have been carved from alabaster. In another, a nobleman kneels before her, offering a rose, his expression a mixture of awe and worship, as if she were a living saint. You know that woman doesn't exist. You know it. And still, you want to be her. Because in the Middle Ages, tapestries lie, but they lie beautifully. You make your way down the corridor, pausing at one particular panel where a maiden with a forehead the size of a platter is stroking a unicorn. Her waist is impossibly tiny. Her hands like dove wings. Her eyes? Comically large. You imagine her blinking twice and toppling over from sheer aesthetic pressure. But no one laughs at these images. They are revered. They shape ideals. The church uses them to depict saints, The courts use them to flatter queens, and ordinary folk like you use them to measure the ever-widening gap between reality and expectation. Historians still argue whether these exaggerated images were meant as true ideals or symbolic shorthand, an artistic language that didn't intend to deceive but still, inevitably, warped perception. Because when you see beauty rendered like this over and over, it becomes harder to believe in anything else. You remember the first time you saw your reflection next to one of these woven fantasies. You were 9, visiting your aunt. You touched the tapestry with sticky fingers and then caught sight of yourself in a polished platter on the wall. Short, freckled, a gap in your teeth. You looked nothing like the girl being serenaded by angels. You cried on the way home. You learned quickly, don't compare yourself to tapestry girls. But that's like telling someone not to look directly at the sun. You do it anyway. These images don't stop at beauty either, they shape behavior. The women in them are always passive. Kneeling, holding flowers, feeding birds, or being rescued. Their expressions hover between blissful and blank, as if emotion would crease the weave too much. You tried once to copy the pose of a woman holding a spindle. You held your arms just so, tried to keep your chin tilted like hers. After 3 minutes, your shoulder cramped and you dropped the spindle. You also looked more confused than divine. And yet, the pressure remains. You smooth your gown. Try to look serene. Think of all the things you shouldn't be, sweaty, flustered, loud, opinionated. There's no tapestry for that. At supper, you sit near a new piece depicting the Lady of the Lake. She's barely clothed, waist deep in water, skin glowing with threadwork that costs more than your entire year's income. Her hair floats around her like golden seaweed. You find yourself touching your own hair under your veil, coarse, clean, slightly frizzy from the rain. You're not jealous, exactly. Just tired. Tired of competing with something that never eats, never ages, never lives. You wonder what these women would look like in real life. You suspect they'd be just as messy as you. Maybe worse. Maybe they'd hate the expectations too. And still, tapestries continue to hang. At court. In churches. In homes. Glorious lies, stitched with reverence. There's one near the chapel of Mary Magdalene. She's pictured with cascading curls, wearing robes so sheer they'd border on scandalous. You once asked the priest why she looked more like a lady at a feast than a penitent sinner. He said, "The artist saw the beauty of her redemption." You nodded, but later you muttered, "The artist also saw the beauty of her neckline." Not that anyone's listening to you. Your little cousin asked last week why she didn't look like the girl in the Lady and Unicorn scene. You told her the girl in the tapestry probably didn't look like that either. That made her smile. A little. Tonight, you sit by your own tiny hearth, the glow of the coals dancing against the wall, and sketch in the ashes with your finger a face. Not symmetrical, not flawless, but smiling, laughing, breathing. And for once, you don't try to make her look like anyone hanging on a wall. You make her look like you. You're walking through the market with straw in your hem and a smear of soot on your cheek when you realize, again, that you're in the wrong kind of story. The ballads and tapestries love to celebrate noble women in towers, glowing like polished ivory, wrapped in silks no one touches. But you just stepped in a puddle that may or may not have contained fish guts, and someone nearby is shouting about carrots with a level of urgency usually reserved for war. Welcome to the other side of beauty in the Middle Ages, the one the songs don't sing about. Peasant beauty. You duck into the shade of a bread cart and pull your scarf tighter. Your hair's been tucked under your veil all day, more from habit than humility. You used to envy the ladies at court, their perfumed gloves, their lemon-scented hair rinses, their dainty little shoes that never touched mud. But lately you've started to wonder, are you the one with more freedom? Because unlike the nobility, your beauty isn't crafted with powdered pearls and sun-bleached wigs. It's earned. It's the glow from working in fields, the flush from carrying water uphill. Your skin may not be alabaster, but it doesn't crack from lead paste either. Still, the pressure's there. Different, but still sharp. In your village, the standard isn't divine perfection. It's earthly appeal. A girl with bright eyes, strong arms, rosy cheeks from wind and sun. Men want someone sturdy enough to pull a cart and soft enough to smile while doing it. It's a balance, and a trap of its own. Your friend Bet fits that mold perfectly. Golden hair braided thick, laugh like a tavern song, hands calloused from work. Everyone calls her beautiful. She also wakes at 4 every morning to rinse her face in cold stream water and rub her cheeks with the cut side of a beetroot. You've seen her do it behind the sheep pen, blushing before the blush. Historians still argue whether rural women actually cared this much about appearance, or if the standards we talk about now were imposed by outsiders, nobles, clerics, artists. But oral traditions suggest the expectations were alive and well, even if the tools were humbler. You once tried to make a face mask from clay and goat's milk. You ended up smelling like a barn and getting a rash. Peasant beauty, rustic and rash-prone. At the market, you pass by a woman selling country rouge. It's just crushed rowan berries mixed with pig fat, but she swears it makes you look merrily virtuous. You buy a pinch, because why not? Your cheeks are chapped from the wind and you've got a harvest dance next week. You glance across the square and spot a pair of noble ladies riding by, their pale faces powdered and framed by elaborate veils. You can smell their rose water from 10 feet away. They don't look down, don't even see you, but you see them. You used to want that life. Still do sometimes. The ease, the gowns, the respect. But then you remember how Lady Sancha cried last winter because a mole appeared on her chin, and her maid didn't notice it in time to cover it before Mass. You remember how she couldn't eat solid food for a week after her latest tooth powder gave her ulcers. You also remember how she once asked if common girls ever smiled when they were alone. Yes. Yes, we do. You return home with your basket of onions and your merrily virtuous berry paste. You scrub your face with a linen cloth dipped in warm ale, rub the rouge into your cheeks, and tie your hair into a thick braid. You look in your mirror shard. You look alive, not polished, not powdered, not holy, but healthy, warm, present. Outside, the sun sets behind the fields. You hear laughter by the well, a song from the far barn. You touch your cheeks again, rosy, yes, but not because of the berries, just because of being. And you think, maybe that's enough. Maybe peasant beauty doesn't get sung about in court ballads or stitched into tapestries. But it's real, and it survives. Even in the mud. Even with fish guts. Especially with fish guts. You're standing at the threshold of your cottage, apron damp and face flushed, when you see her. Lady Alazan? She rides by on a chestnut mare, posture perfect, veil fluttering like a banner of grace. Her gown is deep green velvet, utterly impractical, and trimmed in pearls. Real pearls. You've seen her wear 5 different colors this week and none of them have mud on the hem. She's married now, barely 17. Her face is as smooth as milk, her hands uncalloused, her lashes long enough to cast shadows on her cheeks. Everyone says she's the image of courtly virtue. You close your door gently and press your back to it. Because here's something they don't tell you when you're a girl in the Middle Ages. Your entire relationship with beauty will change depending on whether you're a virgin, a wife, or a widow. You walk to the basin and splash water on your face. The skin under your eyes is puffy from sleep, or crying, or maybe just existing. You're not sure anymore. When you were younger, the standard was clear, be pure, innocent, fresh-faced and ethereal. Your beauty was supposed to reflect your untouched status, unblemished body, untested soul. Virgins are painted with halos. Saints, martyrs, maidens in towers with flowers in their laps and nothing but dreams on their minds. Your friend Marie used to rub her face with mint leaves before Sunday's service. Said it made her look closer to heaven. She wasn't wrong. The priest once said she glowed. Of course, when she turned 15 and got caught kissing the blacksmith's apprentice, her glow was reclassified as temptation, Funny how fast that happens. Once you're married, though, the rules change. Suddenly, beauty must serve. You're expected to be attractive, but not too attractive. Well-kept, but not flirtatious. Glowing, but not seductive. A wife's beauty should suggest fertility, devotion, modest satisfaction. You're supposed to look like you've been chosen, but not like you enjoyed it. Historians still argue over how rigid these roles really were, but in literature, the categories are carved in stone. Virgins are sacred. Wives are dutiful. Widows? Well, widows are a whole other problem. You've met a few. Veils drawn low, voices quiet, eyes heavy with something the rest of us can't touch. Their beauty is supposed to fade, gracefully, of course. There's a grace to grief, they say. A widow should glow with loss, not rouge. You remember Widow Eleanor, who still had striking cheekbones at 40. She powdered her face every day, wore blue instead of black, and smiled too easily at young men. The village girls called her a sorceress. One old man called her a distraction. You just thought she looked like someone who decided to keep being a person, even after her husband stopped breathing. When you pass her in the square, she winks. You're not sure what it means, but you're pretty sure it isn't modest. You glance at yourself now and the polished plate on the wall. You're none of the three. Not a maiden. Not a wife. Not a widow. Just floating. Invisible to the categories. Which means the expectations on you are the most fluid, and the most dangerous. Too plain, and you're overlooked. Too pretty, and you're accused of luring. Too independent, and you're suspicious. Your beauty must always belong to someone else's story. A father, a husband, a grave. You sit at the table and crush a few dried rose petals between your fingers. The scent rises up, faint, sweet, like something remembered too late. You wonder, what if you don't fit any of the boxes? What if your face doesn't say virtue, or mourning, or fertility, but just you? What would people do with a woman who looked like herself for herself? They'd probably whisper, or preach, or throw a stone. But maybe, just maybe, they'd watch her walk by and say nothing. Maybe that's the dream. Later that evening, you braid your hair loosely. You rub a bit of lavender on your wrists, not for anyone, just because it calms you. You wrap yourself in your shawl and sit outside as the stars come out, listening to frogs and wind and the occasional giggle from behind the stable. A wife. A widow. A girl in between. Whatever role they think you're in, whatever box they tried to stuff your beauty into, you're still here. And somehow, that's enough. You're walking through the village with a new ribbon in your hair, simple, blue, a little frayed at the edge, and you can feel it. The stares. Some are curious. Some are admiring. And some are angry. You didn't steal the ribbon. You didn't lie or boast or charm it out of a nobleman's hand. You bought it. With your own coins. At market. It's yours. But apparently, wearing a bit of color outside your station is enough to raise eyebrows. Welcome to the world of sumptuary laws, where your beauty isn't just scrutinized, it's legislated. You pass a group of older women gossiping near the well. One of them glances at your ribbon, then leans to whisper something behind her hand. You feel your ears burn. You keep walking, jaw clenched. Because in this world, looking too good when you shouldn't be able to? That's not admiration. That's a crime. Sumptuary laws are designed to keep everyone in their lane. They dictate what colors you can wear, what fabrics are appropriate, what accessories are reserved for the noble classes. These laws don't just regulate clothes, they regulate beauty itself. You've read the rules scratched on a parish wall. No silk unless you're a knight's daughter. No velvet unless your family owns land. No fur unless your father's name appears in court records. Even colors have rankings. Crimson for counts, deep blue for dukes, and plain brown for everyone else. You've also heard of a girl whipped in the village square because she wore a too bright gown trimmed in gold thread. It wasn't real gold, just clever stitching, but the steward didn't care. Looking noble is not the same as being noble, he said. Historians still debate whether these laws were strictly enforced or mostly symbolic, tools of social control more than legal action. But for people like you, the fear is real. One step out of line, and your ribbon becomes a rebellion. You duck into the herbalist's shop, heart still pounding. She raises an eyebrow at your flushed cheeks. Walking too proud today, are we? You smile, strained. Just warm. She smirks and turns away, but you hear her mutter. Better watch it. Colors get you noticed. That's the real danger. Not the ribbon. The attention. Because the world doesn't like when people appear to rise above their place. If your beauty makes someone question your class, it's not seen as aspiration, it's seen as threat. You remember how Margot once wore a veil with a decorative border she found in a traveler's cart. Within the hour, she was called uppity. By nightfall, someone had spat near her doorstep. She never wore it again. Even cosmetics are part of the game. Too much rouge, and you look like a courtier trying to climb. Too little, and you look like you belong in the fields. There's no winning here. Only adjusting. And so you compromise. You keep the ribbon, but tie it lower, beneath your braid. A little less visible. You wear your gown clean but faded. You let your skin stay slightly windburned, earthy, natural, unthreatening. But there are days, like today, when you want to push back. Just a little. Because why shouldn't you look beautiful? Why should color belong to someone else? Why is dignity so often confused with dullness? Outside, a noblewoman rides by in a fur-trimmed cloak the color of crushed wine grapes. Her hair is laced with gold. She doesn't look at you. But the people around her do. And then they look at you. And they remember who's supposed to shine, and who's supposed to fade into the background. You touch your ribbon again. You could remove it. Fall back in line. But today, you don't. Because even though you live in a world that thinks beauty should obey the law, you know the truth. It never really has. You're sitting on a low stone wall, threading wildflowers into a braid, when a shadow falls across your lap. You glance up, and there he is. A young man. Not much older than you. Leather boots, sword belt, tunic laced tightly across the chest. Hair swept back like he's practiced the motion. You've seen him around before, always with a look like he's trying to win a duel and a song contest at the same time. He nods awkwardly. Nice day. You nod back. It is. And just like that, he's gone, off to wherever squires and would-be knights spend their afternoons trying to appear casual while carrying heavy weapons. You look down at your flowers. One has wilted in your hand. Because while you're here worrying about powdered cheeks and forehead plucking, he's probably worrying about acne under a steel helmet. That's right, men have beauty standards too. And in the medieval world, they're just as punishing. Just less talked about. You've heard the poems. He rode forth with golden curls, a jaw strong as oaths, and eyes blue as polished steel. That's the ideal. Chiseled. Radiant. Hair like a holy relic. Skin untouched by age, scars, or sweat. Basically, a saint in chainmail. But the reality? Sits. Scars. Smelly feet. And a permanent expression of constipation from all the pressure to look like they're born of gods. You once saw a knight remove his helmet and immediately start dabbing his face with linen. Not because of battle. Because of shine. Apparently, greased-up brows don't pair well with poetic legend. Historians still argue how much attention men paid to their appearance beyond hygiene and grooming. But the surviving love poems and chivalric tales suggest something deeper, especially for those at court, where appearance equals status. A knight's armor is polished to mirror finish. His hair is curled, oiled, sometimes even perfumed. There are records of men tinting their beards with herbs to cover grays. And yes, there are powders for blotchy skin, alabaster dust, crushed pearl, and in one tragic case, a lead-based lotion that caused visible shaking in a young nobleman at court. You don't forget that one. His hands trembled so badly during a duel that he dropped his sword on the first parry. People laughed. Quietly. Respectfully. But they laughed. There's a fringe remedy circulating now, young squires washing their faces in sour wine mixed with crushed mint to tighten the pores and brighten the countenance. You overheard two of them debating it outside the stables. One had a red patch on his chin the size of a coin. He kept covering it with his glove. It's not just skin, though. A warrior is expected to have broad shoulders, narrow hips, and strong calves. You once saw a boy tie stones to his ankles and pace the perimeter of the village in secret, trying to build knightly shape. He tripped near the mill and limped for 3 days. And the hair. Oh, the hair. There's a very particular way a courtly man is expected to look. Not too cropped like a monk, not too wild like a bandit, not too long like a bard with questionable morals. Just tousled enough to suggest noble indifference. Of course, the real irony? Knights go into battle covered in metal, faces hidden behind visors. But take off that helmet, and if the jawline doesn't match the ballads, he might be laughed off the field. Even monks aren't immune. They're supposed to be plain, humble. But that doesn't stop some from using lavender water to scent their robes, or trimming their beards with precision that borders on obsessive. You once caught Brother Etienne adjusting his tonsure reflection in the holy water font. He claimed he was checking for sin. You pretended to believe him. And don't even get started on shoes. A well-dressed man's shoes are pointed, narrow, slightly impractical. The longer the toe, the higher his social standing. One young noble had shoes so absurdly long they curled upward and had to be tied to his knees. He tripped on a reed mat during Lent and blamed it on the devil. You smile, remembering that. The boy from earlier passes again, this time sweating and red-faced from sparring. He looks over. You catch a glimpse of a red bump near his temple. He ducks his head quickly and keeps walking. You wonder if he knows you noticed. You wonder if he thinks it makes him less noble, less strong, less him. Later, you sit under the trees and think about how beauty weighs on both shoulders. Women may bear the brunt of it, but men aren't walking free. They're just hiding it better, beneath armor, pride, and expectations that don't allow for a single misstep, wrinkle, or blemish. And just like you, they keep trying. Powdering. Plucking. Perfuming. Because in the court of public opinion, everyone's face is on trial. You're standing in the corner of the main hall, clutching a cup of watered wine, watching the parade of couples dance like painted figures brought to life. The music is sweet, the fire warm, and yet all you can feel is the quiet ache in your stomach. Not from hunger. From the knowledge that every glance, every whispered comment, every careful turn of the head in your direction is an assessment. Because tonight isn't just a feast. It's a market. And you're on the table. Welcome to the marriage market, where beauty isn't just decorative. It's transactional. You adjust your shawl again, trying to emphasize your neckline just enough. Not so low it invites scandal, not so high it makes you look plain. Your cheeks are already tinted with beetroot, faded slightly now from the firelight. But your eyes are still wide, and your hair is freshly rinsed in rosemary water. You've done everything right. But still, your worth here is measured against a dozen other girls in similar veils, all hoping their face, is the one a lord or merchant or somebody with land will remember. You think of your mother, who once told you flatly, your beauty will determine your dowry, and your dowry will determine your freedom. You didn't understand it then. You do now. Historians still argue to what extent physical beauty influenced marriage negotiations in the Middle Ages. In theory, alliances were forged through land, livestock, and social standing. But in reality, one look across a feast hall could shift everything. There's Lady Amabel, barely 15, blonde curls, skin so pale it looks like she's carved from milk. Her family's land is modest, but 2 well-timed compliments from a baron's son last harvest turned her from a nobody into a betrothal prize. Then there's Isolde, a baker's daughter with eyes like storm clouds and a laugh that turns heads. Her father managed to triple her dowry with 1 sheep, 2 casks of wine, and the gift of her face. You remember when a suitor came to visit your family 3 winters ago. You were told to stand by the hearth, cheeks flushed, hands folded, head down but not too far. He studied you like a map, asked if you could sing, then left without a word. Days later, his servant returned. Too thin, he said. Too quiet. You didn't cry. But you didn't speak for 2 days. The truth is, beauty in this world isn't just admired, it's weighed, bargained, monetized. A pretty face can increase a dowry by tenfold. A crooked tooth can tank a match. Your cousin spent half her savings having her front tooth pulled and replaced with a carved piece of bone. It clicks when she talks. She's still not married. And yet, it's not entirely your looks that decide. It's the appearance of virtue. You must be lovely, but not vain. Shy, but not dull. Graceful, but not too graceful, lest someone suspect you've practiced. One girl, Clara, was praised for being handsome without knowing it, as if her ignorance made her more valuable. Tonight you meet the gaze of a man across the room. He's older, wealthy, from the look of his sleeves. He nods at you. You smile, politely, modestly, like you've rehearsed. You hear your name whispered by 2 girls standing nearby. You can't tell if it's envy or warning. Maybe both. You remember a story about a woman who was married off purely because her hands were delicate. No one knew what her voice sounded like until the wedding. By then, it didn't matter. Because once the transaction is made, beauty becomes irrelevant. You're no longer a product. You're a possession. You watch as Lady Amabel is led in a circle by her betrothed, her smile practiced and soft. She looks happy. Maybe she is. You set down your cup and excuse yourself, stepping into the cool night air. The stars above don't care who has the rosiest cheeks or the straightest nose. They shine the same on everyone. You breathe deeply, letting the air chill your skin and wipe away the expectations. You're not just a face. You're not a dowry. You're not a pawn. But tomorrow, you'll braid your hair, press rosewater to your neck, and enter the hall again. Because in the medieval marriage market, no one gets to opt out. Only play smarter. You're kneeling by candlelight, drawing a line of coal under your lower lashes with a sharpened stick, when the knock comes at your door. You freeze. It's late. Too late for visitors. You quickly smudge the line into a soft shadow and tuck the stick under a loose floorboard. Another knock. You open the door to find your neighbor, Marta, standing in her nightcap and cloak. She glances behind her before stepping inside, then pulls the door shut. "Someone saw you," she says. Your heart drops. She means the coal. You sink into the chair by the hearth, heart racing. "Who?" Marta shrugs. "Does it matter?" And no, it doesn't. Because here, in this village, in this century, cosmetics aren't just seen as vanity. They're seen as witchcraft. You sit in silence for a moment, the air between you thick with unspoken dread. Then you whisper, "It was just ash. And oil." She nods. "Of course. Everyone says that. Until the priest gets involved. In theory, beautifying oneself isn't illegal. But in practice? If you look too good, too suddenly, too differently, it invites questions. And those questions can turn sharp faster than a knife in the dark. Historians still debate how deep this connection between cosmetics and sorcery ran. Some suggest it was mostly a clerical concern, weaponized by certain preachers during moral panics. Others argue it was a slow-burning fear that lived in village whispers and courtroom testimonies alike. But you know this. Women have been accused of conjuring demons for less. A little red on the lips? Clearly you've kissed the devil. Thickened lashes? You must be beguiling someone under a spell. Scented oil? Obviously you've trapped an unsuspecting man in a love charm. You've read the cautionary tales. The girl who wore cheek rouge and ended up on trial for making a neighbor's cow go dry. The widow who powdered her skin and was accused of hexing the local brewer when his ale spoiled. The merchant's wife who wore perfume and was called a vessel of Satan's vanity. You even remember the exact phrasing from a church sermon last year. No honest woman darkens her lashes nor paints her lips, for beauty given by unnatural hands is an affront to God. You look down, face burning, a smear of crushed blackberry hidden on your mouth. Now, sitting by the fire, you wonder how it came to this. Cosmetics, when used by nobles, are seen as elegance, refinement, a mark of wealth. But the same line of kohl, the same tinted salve, on a village girl like you? It's suspicious. You're not supposed to glow. Not unless heaven did it for you. You explain to Marta, voice low. It helps with the shadows under my eyes. I haven't been sleeping. She nods. I know. Then, softly, but you must stop. Or be ready. Ready for what? Accusation? Isolation? Worse. There's a fringe remedy whispered about in the nearby town. A salve made from poppy and rose wax that darkens the lips and softens the skin. They call it nightshade gloss, not because it contains poison, but because it must be worn only at night and only in secret. You've never dared try it. The name alone feels like a confession. The irony? Men praise beauty all the time. Sing about it. Chase it. Write sonnets to it. But when a woman actively creates it, that's unnatural, manipulative, dangerous. As if your face must always be an accident, or else it's a crime. You remember the trial of old Annis, the herb woman. Someone accused her of enchanting her complexion with foxglove. She laughed in court and said, "My beauty left me 40 years ago. If I had a spell to bring it back, I'd have used it." They still banished her. Now you stare into the dying fire. Your cheeks are bare. Your lips chapped. You want to feel safe. But you also want to feel seen. Marta leaves without another word. You wait until the moon rises fully. Then you lift the floorboard, take out your little pot of ash and oil, and place it carefully on the hearth. You won't wear it tomorrow. Not because you're guilty. Because you're tired. Tired of proving your soul is still intact just because your lashes are a little darker than usual. Tired of pretending that beauty, if it doesn't come from suffering, is suspicious. You sleep that night with bare skin. But your dreams are painted. And in them, no one knocks on your door. You're kneeling in the chapel, head bowed, hands folded neatly in your lap, but your thoughts are not where they should be. You're thinking about your reflection in the basin this morning. About the slight curve of your lips. About whether your skin looked too flushed. Whether your hair poking from under your veil was too golden, too bright. Whether the priest noticed. Because in this world, beauty and virtue are on a collision course, and you're caught right in the center. You shift slightly on the cold stone floor, the rough wool of your dress itching at your knees. The sermon drones on pride, temptation, the vanity of the flesh. You've heard it all before. Especially the parts where beauty is called a snare, a danger to men's souls, and to your own. And yet, everyone expects you to be beautiful. It's a double bind. You must be lovely, but never vain. Presentable, but never proud. Attractive, but unaware of it. If someone sins because of your face, that's your fault. If someone praises you for your grace, that's God's work. Historians still debate how deeply the church influenced personal grooming habits. But there's no question that sermons shaped the language of beauty. Countless texts describe bodily attractiveness as a reflection of inner purity, or a source of corruption. It all depends on who's watching, and what they want. You remember what Brother Henri said last Lent. A woman should tend her soul as she tends her garden, not for display, but for the Lord. But later that same week, he complimented Lady Eleonora on how, radiant, she looked in prayer. You once asked him about that. He blinked and said, "Her devotion shines through." Sure. You look up now and see him glance at a young woman across the nave. Her veil has slipped slightly. Her neck is exposed. Her hands are folded perfectly. But you know he's not admiring her piety. The truth is, the church wants you to glow, but not too brightly. To shine with holiness, not rouge. To be attractive by accident. If your beauty looks like effort, it's dangerous. You've heard stories of women fasting not for faith, but to stay thin. Of girls who wore hair shirts under their gowns to punish themselves for wanting to be admired. One woman rubbed nettles into her scalp to dull her vanity. Another confessed to praying for smallpox, just so she could stop being seen. You used to press crushed mint to your lips before communion. Not for taste. For color. You told yourself it was just a habit. But deep down, you wanted to be noticed. Even in that sacred space. You once tried to atone for it. Scrubbed your cheeks with vinegar. Covered your hair so tightly you got headaches. But no one noticed your piety. They only asked if you were ill. Outside the chapel, after the service ends, a woman touches your sleeve. You look fresh today, she says, lips pursed. You're not sure if it's a compliment or a warning. You thank her anyway. You walk home slowly, the morning sun warm on your shoulders. You pause at the stream to rinse your hands. You look down and catch your reflection. You look kind, tired, real. And you wonder, why must beauty be a secret? A thing you must disown to be allowed to have? You think of the women in stained glass, so perfect, so luminous. Always gazing upward. Always still. Saints never wrinkle. Never smudge their kohl. Never bite their lips when they're nervous. Saints don't stumble. Or sweat. Or wake up with matted hair. You think of yourself, rushing out of bed, fumbling with your veil, pinching color into your cheeks and then wiping it away in guilt. You're not a saint. But you're not wicked either. Later, at evening prayers, you'll kneel again. You'll bow your head. And when you feel someone watching, you won't flinch. Because your beauty does not belong to them. And it does not belong to the church. It belongs to you. You press your face into a steaming cloth, breathing in the strange mix of thyme, marjoram, and something that smells suspiciously like boiled eel. This is a spa day. Or at least, the medieval version of one. You're crouched in the back room of a healer's cottage, surrounded by jars filled with powders, waxes, dried flowers, and suspicious pastes. The room smells like a garden that caught fire and then got doused in vinegar. But it's warm, quiet, and for the next hour, you're not a daughter, a servant, a target, or a face under constant judgment. You're just a customer of beauty. The healer is an older woman, rumored to have studied under a nun who once served the queen. She doesn't speak much, just hums as she works, her hands steady as she mixes a poultice for your skin. Today's treatment? A cleansing mask made from honey, barley flour, and mashed snails. Yes, snails. You close your eyes and try not to think too hard about it. The mixture is warm and sticky, and when she spreads it across your face, it feels oddly soothing. Supposedly, snail slime is good for smoothing the skin, drawing out impurities, and adding a youthful glow. It also smells like damp moss. Historians still argue how common these kinds of treatments were. Formal spas were mostly reserved for the wealthy or religious retreats, but folk remedies and home-based beauty treatments were found throughout villages and towns. Word of mouth was everything. If something worked, even once, it spread like wildfire. The healer moves onto your arms, rubbing them with a mixture of coarse salt and rosemary. You wince, but only a little. It feels like a brisk wind, not a punishment. There's something comforting about these rituals, so different from the harsh powders and poisonous creams used at court. This is nature. Messy, smelly, sticky, but not lethal. You heard of a noblewoman last year who applied a mercury-based balm before a banquet. She spent the night vomiting and the next week unable to speak above a whisper. They say her skin looked flawless, though, right before it started to peel. You'd rather take the snails. The healer starts the next step, a steam tent. You sit under a heavy cloth while a pot of herbs boils at your feet. The steam rises up, filling the air with the smell of chamomile and mugwort. Your pores open. You feel your shoulders drop for the first time in days. This is what passes for luxury. You hear movement outside, someone else arriving. The healer says nothing, just lifts the edge of your tent and sips you a cup of warm water steeped with sage. You sip it slowly. It tastes bitter and calming, like tea brewed from regret. There's a fringe treatment she offers too, one that's whispered about more than requested: leech therapy. You've never tried it. The idea of tiny creatures feeding on your blood to balance your humors doesn't sit well. But some swear it leaves the skin clear, the eyes bright, and the body renewed. You wonder if they say that just to make themselves feel better. You think about all the other strange beauty efforts you've tried in the past year. Rinsing your hair in rainwater caught on a Thursday, rubbing ash into your elbows, sleeping with slices of cold turnip on your cheeks. All in pursuit of a face that says, worthy. And all without guarantees. The steam slows. The healer removes the cloth, wipes your face clean with lavender water, and nods. You'll do, she says. You smile. Not because you look radiant, you haven't seen yourself yet, but because for once, no one's demanding more. Not virtue, not radiance, not perfection. Just, you'll do. You leave the cottage with your skin damp, your limbs loose, and your hair damp from mist. You smell like herbs and snail, and you don't even care. In a world where beauty is often punishment dressed as praise, this feels like a quiet rebellion. A space where you're tended to, not transformed. Where healing and beauty meet. As you walk home, the sun filters through the trees, catching in the droplets still clinging to your skin. For a moment, you imagine you do look like one of those girls from the tapestries, dewy, golden, divine. But this time, it's not because of lead or pain or prayers whispered between plucks. It's just steam, and snails, and peace. You sit by the fire, brushing out your hair with the carved bone comb your grandmother gave you. The strands fall like a dark curtain over your shoulder, and you study the way they catch the glow, dull in some spots, glimmering in others. You twist one around your finger and sigh. Because deep down, you know, hair is everything. In this world, your hair isn't just hair. It's a message, a statement, a social flag flapping above your head at all hours. And medieval beauty standards? Oh, they love a good head of hair. Not just any hair, of course. It has to be long, thick, glossy. Ideally the color of ripe wheat or honey in morning sun, because in most courtly poetry, that's what the pure and pious maiden always has. Golden locks, untouched by time or scissors or lice. You're somewhere between chestnut and cloud shadow, with a hint of summer in the right light. Not enough to start a sonnet, but maybe enough for a passing compliment. Maybe. You remember your aunt once whispering, "A woman's hair is her crown, and her curse." She wasn't wrong. Hair in this age is tangled in everything: religion, class, sexuality, even virtue. Especially virtue. A maiden's uncovered hair? Scandalous. A married woman's uncovered hair? Dishonorable. A nun's hair? Gone. Shorn as a symbol of shedding vanity and earthly attachments. But walk through any market town, and you'll see the contradictions. A noblewoman in an elaborate headdress that somehow still shows off her waves. A milkmaid with her hair braided down her back, drawing more looks than the butter she's trying to sell. A widow with every strand pinned and bound and still whispered about behind her back. Historians still debate how much of this obsession came from the church versus cultural continuity from earlier Roman and Germanic traditions. But by your time? The standard is firmly in place. Beautiful hair equals beautiful woman. You've heard of women soaking their hair in fermented rye water to increase shine. Others use egg yolks mixed with vinegar, which smells like regret but apparently works miracles. You tried that once. You smelled like a salad and scared the neighbor's dog. There's even a fringe recipe from a nun's notebook. Soak a raven feather in goat's milk overnight, comb it through your hair with a prayer, and wait for it to darken and thicken. You tried that too. Nothing changed, except you lost the feather, and the goat was furious. And then there's the danger. A girl in the next village was said to have hair so fine and long it touched the backs of her knees. One day, a visiting lord rode by and stared too long. That night, her father cut her hair to her ears, declared her too proud, and sent her to the convent. She didn't even like her hair. You still think about her. About how a part of her identity was taken with a single snip. Because beauty, when it isn't praised, is punished. You remember the first time someone called your hair pretty. You were 10. A boy said it while throwing a frog at you. You went home and washed it 3 times, unsure if it was a compliment or an insult. Your mother said, "Get used to both." So now you brush. Carefully. Evenly. You oil the ends with rosehip when you can get it. You avoid letting your siblings touch it. You sleep with it braided to keep it from knotting. You cover it modestly in chapel, but not too modestly, because there's still a small, defiant part of you that wants to be seen. Because in this world, where you can't control much, your class, your future, your dowry, you can control your hair. At least, mostly. You finish brushing. Twist your hair into a thick plait. Tie it with a faded ribbon. You know it's not courtly. You know it's not poetry. But it's yours. And tonight, under the flicker of firelight and the hush of wind through the shutters, that feels like enough. Let the ballads have their golden girls. You'll keep your storm cloud braid and the freedom to shake it loose. You duck into the shadows behind the baker's stall just in time to avoid Marjorie, who's parading through the market square like a duchess, even though she's only the miller's daughter. She's wearing them again. The infamous crimson sleeves. Too long, too wide, too embroidered. They trail behind her like banners. Every time she lifts her arms, they ripple like a bishop's blessing. People stare, men, women, a few chickens. Some with admiration. Some with something closer to horror. You can't help it. You peek out. She sees you. Smiles. Gives the tiniest wave. And just like that, you feel like you're wearing a sack of oats. Because in medieval fashion, clothing isn't just about staying warm or decent, it's a billboard. And beauty? Beauty is loud. In the sumptuary-obsessed world you live in, what you wear can be just as important, sometimes more so, than how your face looks. Velvet speaks. Fur roars. Gold thread sings. And if you're not careful, you'll be fined. Or worse. Marjorie is towing that line. You remember a sermon last spring, when Father Thomas practically spat fire about the vanity of silks, and the arrogance of slashed sleeves. He even said certain hemlines were a temptation sent by Lucifer in lamb's wool. You stifled a laugh. Barely. But he wasn't joking. Historians still argue whether sumptuary laws were really enforced or just theatrical posturing from the crown. But down in the villages and towns, they have teeth. Everyone knows someone who got in trouble for wearing something above their station. Even a ribbon in the wrong shade of blue could spark suspicion. And yet fashion keeps pushing forward. You've seen the tapestries. Pointed shoes so long they have to be tied to the knees. Gowns with sleeves so massive they double as picnic blankets. Headgear shaped like castles or ships or praying hands. Beauty by absurdity. There's even a fringe style gaining ground in the city. The sideless surcoat. Imagine a gown, but with the sides cut so high your underdress becomes the main event. Conservative minds call it the windows of hell. You call it ambitious. Of course, you don't own anything like that. Your wardrobe consists of 3 linen shifts, 1 decent overdress, a patched apron, and a head covering that has seen better years, and possibly better centuries. Still, you try to play the game. You learn to dye cloth with onion skin to get a pale yellow. You save feathers for your cap when no one's looking. You stitch little details into your cuffs, just enough to be interesting without being labeled presumptuous. Because fashion here is a tightrope. Look too plain, and you're invisible. Look too fancy, and you're dangerous. There's an older woman who walks with a limp in your village. They say it's from falling in heels she wasn't allowed to wear. The priest claimed it was divine punishment. She claimed she slipped on cabbage. You believe her. You once heard a young woman fined for wearing squirrel fur. Squirrel. Not mink. Not fox. Squirrel. Because it was stitched in a way that resembled noble fashion. Imagine being fined for creativity. And men aren't immune either. You saw 2 young lads strutting around in tights so tight you could see their regret. One of them tripped over a dog and ended up in a cart of cabbages. His tights were never the same. Tonight you sit by your hearth and stitch a little red thread into the hem of your shift. Just 1 line. No one will notice it but you. but you'll know it's there. And in a world that wants to dictate how you dress, how you move, how you appear, that tiny thread feels like rebellion. Let Marjorie have her crimson sleeves. You've got fire in your hemline. You wake to the sound of bells. Not church bells. Court bells. You sit up, heart thudding, as word buzzes through the village like bees in a cracked hive. Lady Yusselt has arrived. With her entourage. And her mirror. Not just any mirror. A polished silver plate imported from Venice, wrapped in embroidered cloth and guarded by a man with more rings than fingers. You slip on your best overdress, creased, slightly singed from last week's cooking fire, and run barefoot to the green. Because today, for just a moment, nobility is within reach. You squeeze between two washerwomen to get a better view. And there she is. Lady Yusselt of Breckridge. Pale as cream, cheekbones sharp enough to cut cloth, lips the precise shade of pomegranate. Her hair is braided with ribbons so fine they look like spider silk. She's wearing a gown the color of frost. And her mirror? It glints like a stolen moon. You squint, trying to decide what it is that makes her so untouchable. And then you see it. Stillness. She doesn't fidget. Doesn't sweat. Doesn't shift or scratch or even blink too fast. She moves like she's floating, like gravity doesn't quite apply to her. That's what noble beauty looks like. Effortless effort. You turn to the girl beside you. Do you think she wakes up looking like that? She snorts. She has 3 maids. They probably sing her awake. And she's not wrong. Historians still debate how extensive noblewomen's beauty routines really were. Some records show entire morning schedules dedicated to grooming, scented water baths, hair steaming, skin tonics. Others suggest this was idealized fantasy, more common in poetry than practice. But one thing's certain, looking perfect took work. Just not the kind anyone was supposed to see. Lady Yusselt dismounts slowly, and her sleeves drape like banners. You can't even imagine lifting bread to your mouth with sleeves like that. You'd choke before lunch. You wonder what she smells like. Definitely not pickled onions and fire smoke. Probably rosewater. Maybe even imported ambergris, the whale stuff. You once read it was used as perfume. You gagged at the thought. A younger girl in the crowd whispers, "She's so beautiful. I bet she's never had a pimple in her life." You want to laugh. You want to shout. She probably has a potion for that. But instead you just nod. You're tired. Tired of chasing this illusion. Because noble beauty isn't just about features, it's about resources. It's about time, servants, rare ingredients, imported pigments, and staying indoors all day so the sun doesn't darken your skin. It's about not lifting a finger so your hands stay soft. It's about pretending you were born glowing. There's even a fringe belief among some noble households that women shouldn't eat publicly, lest the act of chewing disrupt their mystique. You once saw a lady sip broth through a lace veil. You thought she was sick. Turns out she was fashionable. As the procession moves on, the crowd slowly scatters. You remain for a moment, feet bare, dress wrinkled, hair coming loose in the breeze. You feel like dirt beside her. But then you look around. See other girls brushing off aprons, tying back hair, lifting baskets. You see beauty, but the kind earned with sun and wind and work. And maybe, just maybe, that kind lasts longer than frost-colored gowns and silver mirrors. That night you wash your face in cool stream water and braid your own hair with string, humming to yourself. You hold no court. You own no mirror. But you sleep easily. And you dream of someone brushing your hair not because it's perfect, but because it's yours. You're standing on a stool, arms outstretched like a scarecrow, while your cousin threads a bodice so tight you're pretty sure you'll never breathe again. "Stop squirming," she huffs. "You'll ruin the lines." The lines, you think, are already ruined by the fact that your ribs are folding inward like parchment. She yanks one last time, and you let out a sound somewhere between a squeak and a gasp. She nods approvingly. "Now you have a waist." You always had a waist. But in medieval terms? You didn't really have one until it looked like it could be snapped in half by a passing breeze. You glance down. The bodice creates a slope from your ribs to your hips so dramatic it might qualify as a hill on the king's next topographical survey. It itches. It pinches. And bless it, it works. You look smaller. Compressed. Beautiful, maybe? Or maybe just lightheaded. Because yes, medieval fashion did this too. The modern mind tends to picture corsets as a later fashion, but tight lacing existed long before bone stays. In your era, fitted bodices, lace kirtles, and belt-tight gowns create the same effect, shaping a body into something ideal, something contained. Historians still argue whether women actually wore body-shaping garments daily or just for special occasions. Some say tight lacing was mostly elite pageantry. Others point to evidence of working women with cinched waists and pinched ribs. Either way, the desire to shrink, to mold one's form, ran deep. You've heard whispered tips pass between girls. Drink vinegar to dull appetite. Wrap wet cloths around your belly at night. Chew bitter herbs to purge bloat. You once saw a noble woman faint during mass and smile about it afterward. "It means the silhouette is working," she said. Fringe heelers sometimes worn against tight lacing, they say it can misalign the womb, or make you hysteric. But those same healers also prescribe powdered beetle wings for freckles, so you're not sure who to believe. You step down from the stool dizzy. Your cousin hands you a ribbon cap. It completes the look. Now you're ready for the fair. You walk carefully. No sudden breaths. No unexpected turns. No reaching above your head, lest the seams split and the illusion collapse. At the fairground, people notice. You get glances, double takes, even a compliment from a boy who normally ignores you. But you also can't eat, can't run, can't laugh too hard without feeling something shift inside your ribs. You catch your reflection in a vendor's polished shield and barely recognize the girl staring back. Is this you? Or just an approximation? Beauty here isn't just surface. It's scaffolding. You build it with fabric and string, and then you climb inside and pretend it's your natural shape. But you know better. Later, back home, your cousin unlaces you with the urgency of a scribe unsealing a scroll. You inhale sharply, ribs expanding like bellows. Your skin is marked with lines, red, tender, indentations from the garment's edge. You press your hand there, feeling the memory of pressure long after it's gone. And you wonder, if something beautiful has to hurt this much, is it really yours? That night you sleep in a plain shift. No bodice. No shaping. Just your body, soft and unbound, settling into the straw mattress like it's allowed to exist. And maybe, tomorrow, you'll still wear the lace dress. But tonight you breathe like someone who finally owns her own lungs. You're seated on a wooden stool with a clay bowl in your lap, carefully mixing crushed rosemary, lamb fat, and a splash of wine vinegar. Not for cooking, though it smells oddly appetizing, but for your feet. Yes, your feet. Because in the twisted architecture of medieval beauty, even the parts no one's supposed to see must still be beautiful. Just in case. Your aunt once told you, "A lady should be lovely from crown to toe. The Lord sees everything," which is both comforting and terrifying, depending on the day. You dab the mixture onto your heels, hoping it'll soften the calluses from last week's berry-picking expedition. The salve is warm, a little greasy, and highly suspicious. But the local midwife swears by it. You'd try anything. Because tomorrow is the feast of St. Cuthbert, and you're supposed to walk in the procession barefoot. And nothing ruins a solemn religious parade like cracked heels and dusty arches. You wiggle your toes, noticing how they've spread from years of going without shoes. Noble women don't have this problem. Their feet stay dainty inside soft kid leather slippers. Yours have weathered thorns, rocks, frost, and once, the business end of a goose. Historians still argue about whether foot aesthetics mattered broadly across classes, but there's no doubt that noble circles obsessed over it. Courtly poems often describe a woman's ivory ankles, or petal-like step. There are records of women having tiny shoes specially made, not for comfort, but to imply daintiness, even if they never walked in them. You once saw a pair at the castle's market stall. Red velvet, no soles, clearly for show. You wondered what they'd do if it rained, or if a chicken got too curious. There's even a fringe beauty myth that some noble families whispered, soaking your feet in milk every morning would ensure they stayed pale and soft. Milk stolen from the first draw of a virgin cow at sunrise. Which raises at least 5 logistical questions you're not prepared to answer. You've done your best. Scrubbed with ash, filed with a shell, massaged with oil. You even embroidered a new band for your ankle just in case someone glances down during the hymn. Because even if no one sees your feet, you do. And in this world, sometimes that's enough reason to care. Your cousin passes by and smirks. Didn't know you were preparing your toes for marriage. You throw a scrap of cloth at her, laughing. But inwardly, a part of you is preparing. Not for marriage, necessarily, but for all the eyes that might judge, and the few that might admire. You think about how beauty works like that here. It reaches down to every surface. Fingernails buffed with suede. Elbows rubbed with goose grease. Lips tinted with elderberry. Even knees sometimes dusted with powder for dancers. Beauty is all-encompassing, or it wants to be. You finish rubbing in the salve and pull your linen socks back on. You tuck the bowl away, wipe your hands on your apron, and stand. Your feet feel warm, clean, cared for. Tomorrow, you'll walk for St. Cuthbert. The cobbles will press into your soles. The crowd will cheer. The priest will chant. No one will know what you did tonight. But you'll know. And for once, that's enough. You step into the fading evening light, feeling, strangely, like every part of you matters. Even the parts that carry you silently through the dirt. You sit beneath the eaves of the bakery, chewing the last bite of a tart apple, when she walks by. Agnes. The kind of beautiful that seems effortless, wind-kissed cheeks, eyes like polished stone, and that loose, loping stride of someone who doesn't care how she looks, which somehow makes her look even better. No cosmetics. No fashionable veil. Not even sleeves that match. And yet every head turns. Even yours. You've seen her at market, at church, down by the stream where she tends her sheep. Always a little rumpled, always smiling. You used to tell yourself she was just healthy looking, which was code for not really beauty, just the kind born of sunshine and good bones. But lately you're not so sure. Because in a world filled with rules and routines and layers of ointments, Agnes breaks all of them. And somehow wins. You once asked her what she used on her skin. She blinked and said, "Soap?" As if it were the punchline of a joke. Then she shrugged. "And I wash with stream water when it's warm enough." You went home and stared at your row of pots and powders like they betrayed you. Historians still debate the cultural importance of natural beauty in the medieval period. Was it prized as innocence? Or was it just the accidental privilege of those who didn't need to try? Either way, Agnes seems to embody that frustrating ideal, beauty without artifice. You wonder if she's ever been told she's beautiful. You wonder if she believes it. She probably doesn't spend hours preparing to be seen. She doesn't contort or compress or scrape pigment over her cheeks. She exists, and it's enough. But here's the rub. Everyone loves to praise natural beauty, but only when it happens to match the current ideal. Pale, clear skin? You're radiant. Freckles and sunburn? You're wild. Scars or moles? Now you're just careless. So even natural isn't really natural. It's just a different performance. Agnes walks past you now, nods politely, and continues toward the stream with a bucket in each hand. You notice the curl of her hair at the nape of her neck, damp from the heat. Not styled. Just there. You sigh. It's hard not to envy her. You remember the old ballad your mother used to sing, about the milkmaid who captured a nobleman's heart by being unspoiled by rouge, unshaped by dress. But conveniently she also had hair, like spun silver, and a voice, like the Virgin's harp. Funny how that works. You think about the hours you've spent coaxing your hair into submission, practicing half smiles, walking with just enough sway to appear graceful but not bold. All of it to earn what Agnes seems to get by accident. You're not angry at her. Not really. But tonight, as you rinse your face and brush your hair before bed, you wonder what it would feel like to walk through town unpainted, uncinched, unbothered. To let people see the real you, not the version you assembled. You pull the blanket over your shoulders and close your eyes. Tomorrow, maybe you'll skip the powder. Maybe you won't. Because natural beauty might be effortless for some, but for others, just surviving the expectations is its own kind of victory. You're in the courtyard, ankle deep in puddles, chasing a pig that does not want to be caught. It squeals. You squeal. Everyone's laughing, until someone mentions your cheeks. They're glowing, a boy says, half teasing. Like a noblewoman after Vespers. You blush harder, and the glow intensifies. You look away, pretending to focus on the pig. But in your mind, the wheels are already turning. Because blush, you've been told, is the sign of youth, of virtue, of life. And in the world you inhabit, nothing is more prized, or more imitated. You retreat into the kitchen after the pig has been wrangled, cheeks still flushed. You dab them with a damp cloth, suddenly aware of your own heat. You catch your reflection in the copper pot, rosy cheeks, sweaty brow, wind-blown hair. You almost look radiant? Not quite the beauty you're supposed to be, but close. You know this look won't last. So tomorrow, like many days before, you'll do what other girls do, try to fake it. Blush is sacred. For the noblewomen, there are imported pigments, crushed roses, dried cochineal, powdered cinnabar. Dangerous? Of course. But beauty often walks hand in hand with poison. You've heard the stories. Women who use too much vermilion and developed madness of the skin, peeling, blistering, even fever. Historians still argue if it was the mercury in the mix or just sheer overuse. You use beet juice. It's not glamorous, and it stains your fingertips something awful, but it works. Just a dab on the apples of your cheeks. Just enough to suggest that you exist somewhere between health and holiness. You know girls who slap their faces before mass just to get some natural flush. You know others who rub their cheeks with wool until they glow like candlelight. Some even pinch themselves during mealtime conversation, hoping a red face will distract from a dull dress. There's an old midwife in town who swears that blushing is the soul trying to escape the skin. You're not sure what that means, but it sounds dramatic and vaguely noble. Then again, there's a fringe folk belief that if a girl blushes too easily, it means she's hiding something. Shame, perhaps. Or desire. You once blushed when a knight asked your name, and were teased for a week. So blush is tricky. It can elevate or incriminate. A noblewoman might blush and be praised for her modesty. You might blush and be told to cover up. Still, you paint it on. Not too much. Not too red. You practice expressions in the bronze pot's reflection, sweet surprise, bashful delight, slight amusement. All calibrated for just the right color. Because blush isn't just about looking good, it's about appearing alive. You could be pale as parchment, but if your cheeks are touched with pink, people assume you're healthy, young, innocent. You think of all the paintings hanging in the castle, Madonnas and maidens, saints and queens, all with that delicate flush painted in. Even the ones who died for their faith. Apparently, martyrdom is prettier with a little rouge. Tonight, your cheeks are still faintly pink from the pig chase. It's the kind of glow no pot can replicate, born of laughter and motion and a little embarrassment. You think maybe that's the best kind. As you slip into bed, you whisper to no one, "May tomorrow's blush be as honest as today's." Because sometimes, the rarest beauty is the kind that doesn't need fixing. You're perched on a hay bale behind the stable, carefully plucking thorns from the hem of your gown, when Edith leans in with a whisper. "Have you seen Cecily's eyebrows?" You raise an eyebrow, intact, currently functional, and murmur, "What about them?" "They're gone." You blink. "Gone, gone?" "Gone. Like a candle snuffed out." Said it makes her eyes look holier. You pause, holding a burr between your fingers. Because you've heard of this medieval devotion to eyebrow editing. but knowing it existed and watching someone shave off their brow with a dull knife from the cheese stall? Two very different things. Still, it's true, beauty up top is as curated as beauty anywhere else. And in your world, eyebrows are a battlefield. Some women thin them. Others pluck them into ghostly arches. Some shave them off entirely to create a high, smooth forehead. The noble brow, they call it. Because yes, in this time, foreheads are fashion. Historians still argue whether this trend began with noble women trying to emulate religious iconography. Many saints are painted with serene, open brows, or whether it stemmed from classical ideas of proportion and intelligence. But the trend? Very real, very enduring, and very painful. You remember trying it once. Just a little. You plucked 6 hairs and cried on the 7th. Your mother laughed, gave you a kiss on the head, and said, "Vanity hurts more than sin." You never tried again. But Cecily? Cecily committed. Word spreads through the village faster than fire on dry thatch. Suddenly everyone's looking a little higher on each other's faces. Even the baker's wife is caught leaning suspiciously close to a looking glass. It's not just the loss of brows, it's what replaces them. You've seen girls rub burnt almonds into their skin to mimic fine hairs. Others use soot, charcoal, or even crushed lead-based pigment, drawing dramatic arcs meant to whisper elegance and piety. You tried a charcoal stick once. Ended up looking like a startled owl. There's a fringe beauty tip passed around by candlelight. If you want your eyebrows to grow back thicker, rub goose fat into the skin every night while reciting the Lord's Prayer backward. You're not desperate enough to try it. Yet. The contradictions are endless. You're told to look demure but captivating, modest but alluring, religious but fashionable. And somehow, all of this is communicated through your eyebrows. Too thick? You're untamed. Too thin? You're vain. None at all? You're either rich or mad. You sometimes wonder what medieval men think about all this. Then you remember last year's harvest dance, when a boy complimented your brows by saying they looked like 2 tame slugs. You haven't spoken to him since. Cecily walks past later that evening. You try not to stare, but how can't you? Her face is smooth above the eyes, eerily serene, like she stepped out of a fresco. She catches your gaze and smiles. And you realize she looks bold. Not holy. Not mad. Just fearless. And suddenly, you're not sure if you envy her or worry for her. That night you stare into your candlelit reflection. Your brows are uneven, slightly unruly. Familiar. You lean close to the mirror and whisper, "Let them be." Because sometimes, the most radical thing you can do is nothing at all. You're crouched beside a shallow stream, cupping icy water in your hands to rinse your face. The morning air bites your skin, but the cold is welcome. It sharpens your senses, chases away sleep, and clears yesterday's soot from your cheeks. A dragonfly hovers near the bank. For a moment, everything is still. Until you catch your reflection in the rippling water. There you are, hair hastily pinned, freckles blooming across your nose, the faint shadow of a pimple just above your lip. You sigh. Not because you dislike what you see, but because you know it's not what you're supposed to see. Not according to the church, the court, the town, your aunt, or those little voices that linger in your skull long after the mirror is gone. Because as much as beauty here is cosmetic, fashionable, and theatrical, it's also moral. Yes, moral. You were raised to believe that a pure appearance reflects a pure soul. That modesty and neatness signal virtue. That ugliness, real or imagined, can mean sin. You were warned not to be too vain, of course, but also not to let yourself go. It's a narrow path, like walking a ridge with steep drops on either side. Look too proud, and you're a Jezebel. Look too plain, and you're clearly neglecting God's temple. Historians still argue how deeply these ideals were internalized by women themselves. Some say these moral expectations were tools of control, pressed on by clergy and culture alike. Others suggest many women found empowerment in spiritual beauty, choosing to align their grooming with their faith. But either way, you feel the weight. You remember Sister Almeida, who once told your class that every blemish on your skin was a lesson in humility. You believed her until you saw her dabbing lavender oil on her own chin behind the chapel. So what's the truth? Is beauty a trap? A blessing? A battlefield? You swirl your fingers in the water and think about the contradictions. How saints are painted with glowing skin and downcast eyes. How demons are shown as twisted, monstrous things. How the prettiest girls in the village are expected to be the most obedient, and punished harshest when they're not. You once heard a friar declare that vanity was the devil's favorite perfume. And then a week later, you saw him gawking at Marjorie's new sleeves during confession. That's the thing. Everyone preaches restraint. But the system thrives on spectacle. Even pilgrims heading to holy shrines sometimes dress their best. Because what if they're seen? What if a miracle requires a good first impression? There's a fringe belief, especially among cloistered nuns, that physical beauty is a divine test. That the more beautiful you are, the more temptations you'll face, and the greater your spiritual burdens. You're not sure if that's comforting or condescending. Still, you do your hair before Mass. You pinch your cheeks. You smooth your sleeves. Not out of vanity, but because you've been taught that care equals respect. Respect for yourself, for others, for the world. And when you catch your reflection, flawed, alive, utterly human, you try not to flinch. Instead, you breathe. Maybe beauty isn't about pleasing others or earning praise or chasing salvation. Maybe it's about being present. You rise, your skin still tingling from the cold, and head back up the hill toward the village. The morning sun kisses your shoulder. The wind tugs at your hem. You walk forward, visible, imperfect enough. You sit cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by scraps of linen, a cracked hand mirror, and a pallet of crushed herbs you spent the better part of an hour preparing. Tomorrow's the Midsummer Festival. And tonight, for no one but yourself, you want to feel beautiful. Not just tidy. Not just suitable. Not just acceptable to some passing merchant, or judgmental neighbor or minor priest who thinks women should resemble faded tapestries. You want to glow. So you start at the beginning. You steep marigold petals in warm oil and press it gently along your cheekbones. It smells like last year's harvest and a little like soap. You pat your skin dry with a square of cloth your mother once embroidered, uneven stitches soft from washing. You smile. Next, you smear a dab of blackberry juice on your lips. It's sweet. Sticky. You taste summer. You dab some onto your cheeks, just enough to mimic that rush you get when someone you like says your name in a certain way. You rub your fingertips with lavender ash and sweep the dust beneath your eyes. Just a touch. For shadows. For depth. For defiance. In the mirror, you barely recognize yourself, but not in a bad way. You look like someone you've been waiting to become. Someone who knows what suits her, and who finally doesn't ask permission. Historians still puzzle over the role of personal beauty in private medieval life, what it meant when it wasn't performance for court or church, but an inward act. Some believe women used these rituals as quiet expressions of autonomy. Others think they were small rebellions against the tight scaffolding of social expectation. You believe both are true. You think of that tapestry in the Lord's Hall, the lady with the unicorn. Always the unicorn. Always the mystery. Everyone reads it differently. But you've stared at her long enough to know she holds her own leash. No one else. There's a fringe practice among certain convents you've heard, where nuns write prayers onto small bits of birch bark, grind them into powder, and mix them into rose balm. To anoint the soul as much as the skin. You don't know if it's real, but you hope it is, because sometimes beauty feels like prayer. You wrap a scarf over your shoulders. You twist your hair with sprigs of rosemary. And then, delicately, deliberately, you place a small, iridescent beetle wing above your brow. Just one. For luck. For legend. For you. You rise slowly, the room dim with dusk, your face half lit by candlelight and half shadowed by memory. You're not a princess. Not a saint. Not a storybook maiden. You're real. Tomorrow, someone will always have an opinion. Someone will think you're too much, or not enough. Someone will whisper. Someone will scoff. Let them. You turn from the mirror and walk to the window. The stars have begun to peek through the night, silent and soft, like freckles on heaven's face. And for once, you don't need them to make a wish. You already feel like one has come true. Now, as your breath slows and the night draws in, imagine yourself stepping outside. The festival is over. The torches are fading. The laughter, the bells, the judgment, all of it has slipped into silence. You walk barefoot through the dewy grass, your skin still warm from the day's sun and the glow of your own care. You carry nothing with you. No makeup. No mirror. No corset pulling you inward. Just the memory of laughter, and a face, your own, held softly in your hands. Each step you take feels lighter. The weight of impossible standards, of whispered rules and rigid beauty slips away like a shawl dropping from your shoulders. The moon rises. The air is cool, tender. You lie down beneath a willow tree and look up at the stars. You are not a painting to be preserved. Not a poem to be dissected. Not a mold to be filled. You are a flame. A breeze. A whisper of warmth that belongs to no one but you. And now, with the night wrapped around you like a balm, you let your thoughts grow quieter. You let your body soften. You let your heart rest. Because here, under these stars, you are already enough. Exactly as you are. Sleep well. Hey guys. My name is Stefan. Thank you so much for being here. Your support means a lot and I look forward to bringing you new topics soon. Stay kind, stay inspired, and I'll see you tomorrow.